Chapter 1247. However, it wasn't without results, because the child was holding the bald rabbit in its mouth. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan just smiled gently. I didn't expect you to have a way. He didn't expect Little White to be able to catch this slippery guy like a loach in this place. Because even he had to spend some effort to find the rabbit, but Little White seemed to have a natural restraining effect, and the rabbit couldn't escape at all. Lin Yuan's words caused Little White to be dissatisfied. She twisted her body and shook off the black stains on her body. At this moment, the rabbit was already obediently lying on the ground. Although it looked like a human, it still maintained the most primitive state of 4 limbs on the ground. Did you just use those tricks to kill us with the poison bow? Lin Yuan saw through the rabbit's flaw with one sentence, because he already clearly saw that the rabbit had more than one kind of poison in the fog. When he said this, he directly asked this question, but after he said this sentence, the rabbit actually shook its head. In fact, Lin Yuan also felt a little surprised, because in his opinion, the rabbit in front of him was fine, and was even very weak, not even reaching the Demon King realm. While seeing this change, he was also a little puzzled. The tiger on the previous level was already very powerful, but this rabbit was actually 1 level above the tiger, so it should be much stronger than the tiger. However, he didn't know why the rabbit was so weak. Lin Yuan frowned. You bald head, why are you 1 level higher than the tiger? After he said this sentence, the rabbit actually turned its head to the side. It was as if it didn't want to look at him at all. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He naturally could see that the rabbit was a little stubborn at this moment. Lin Yuan walked straight over, then grabbed the fur on the rabbit's body, and then gave it a hard slap. If you don't speak, I'll pluck all the fur off your body. After he said this, the rabbit was indeed a little evasive, but it still stubbornly didn't want to do anything. Seeing this, Lin Yuan smiled faintly. Little Iron Egg, have you eaten roasted rabbit meat before? After he said this, Little Iron Egg was a little excited. He directly took a step forward. I love eating this thing the most, and I have a lot of experience in dealing with it. If Master is willing, I can help you deal with it right away. He said this without the slightest hesitation. It was as if he was very interested in everything. He seemed to be unable to restrain himself, and directly rushed over. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan smiled. He could see that the bald rabbit was a little evasive at this moment. Even so, it wasn't afraid. It was at this moment that Lin Yuan's expression suddenly changed, because he found that this guy actually seemed to want to escape. But at this moment, Little Iron Egg to grab the rabbit's ear. The rabbit was as tall as a person, while Little Iron Egg was only half his height. However, he wasn't afraid at all. He directly sat on the rabbit's back and grabbed the rabbit's ear tightly. Stop right there. Little Bruiser shouted loudly. Just as he finished shouting, the fellow next to him, who was the rabbit, who hadn't dared to make a move all this while, finally opened his mouth. What exactly do you want? Why do you have to make things difficult for me? I'm nothing more than a servant of someone else. After he said this, he had a bitter look on his face. Lin Yuan smiled faintly. Then who was the one who enslaved you? He wanted to know what else was hidden in this place, because he felt that everything had changed when he stepped on this floor. This place seemed to be a special world with a bottomless abyss. When he saw this scene, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He could clearly feel the vastness of this world, but the rabbit's appearance was too abrupt. You can't do anything even if I tell you. Although you can deal with me, you can't deal with the thing behind me. When he said this, there was a trace of fear on his face. When Lin Yuan saw this, he shook his head gently. No matter what, you have to tell me who's behind you. Otherwise, I don't care if I can eat more roasted rabbit meat today. After he said this, the rabbit finally lowered its head. You forced me to do this. I didn't want to do this at first, but you forced me to tell you who's behind this and who's involved in this matter. I had no choice but to do this. By the time he finished speaking, pustules had already started to appear on his body one after another. Lin Yuan frowned. This guy was clearly feeding himself to the poison. Now he wanted to use his own power to release all the poison. This way, he would be able to force Lin Yuan and the others to retreat. When Little Iron Egg saw this, he naturally didn't dare to sit on the rabbit's back. He directly jumped back. At this moment, Lin Yuan suddenly blew out a breath of air. This breath of air was like a big mass of air, surrounding the rabbit. I originally wanted to eat roasted rabbit meat, but it seems like you're not very obedient. Why don't I just turn you into a roasted rabbit? After he said this, the ball of air dragged the rabbit and jumped into the air. The rabbit originally wanted to release all the poison on its body, but at this moment, it didn't have any leeway to resist. Lin Yuan didn't know how many monster kings he had dealt with, let alone this little guy who wasn't even a monster king. His movements started to become a lot more ferocious. At this moment, a ball of fire appeared on his hand and directly flew towards the ball of air. When this happened, pustules kept appearing on the rabbit's body. However, it suddenly opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of purple-red smoke. The smoke seemed to have an extremely strong corrosive effect. It could corrode the ball of air. Lin Yuan snorted coldly. You still want to use such a method of concealment at a time like this? You still want to use such a method to escape? After he said this, the flames inside directly surrounded the ball of air. Waves of foul smell came from the ball of air. Chapter 1248. Lin Yuan could naturally tell that this fellow wanted to self-detonate first, and then use the origin spirit to escape. How could he give this fellow this opportunity? As soon as he thought of this, he reached out his hand, because in his opinion, it was almost impossible to directly operate such a simple method. It was the bald rabbit. It obviously didn't think that way. He snorted coldly. Don't think that you can catch me just because your cultivation level is high. Even if, the rabbit originally wanted to shout, but he didn't expect that as soon as he opened his mouth, a wave of energy would instantly entangle him. He didn't even finish his sentence. He stood there in a daze. At that moment, a bell had appeared in Lin Yuan's hand. At that moment, a ray of golden light finally entangled him. When he saw this scene, he didn't react at all. The rabbit stood on the spot in a daze. It was as if he didn't know how to express his feelings. He didn't even know what was going on. When he saw this change, Bruiser was also stunned. Master, what's going on? As soon as he asked this, Lin Yuan chuckled softly. Don't think that these fellows are so easy to get to know. They will use all sorts of methods to deal with us, so we should be more cautious at all times. After saying this, he didn't hesitate at all and reached out to grab the rabbit in front of him. When he saw this scene, the rabbit didn't react at all. He directly grabbed Lin Yuan with his back in his hand, or rather, he held his origin spirit in his hand. Lin Yuan smiled faintly. I don't know if you've heard of the soul-searching hand. The moment he finished speaking, the rabbit's expression changed drastically. The rabbit even started to kick his legs in confusion, as if he didn't know how to deal with what was going to happen next. When he saw this change, Lin Yuan shook his head gently. Tell me who's behind this and I'll let you live. Otherwise, I'll destroy your body and soul right here. He wasn't lying. If these fellows were really unwilling to tell him who was behind this, then he could really destroy their bodies and souls. Furthermore, he hadn't found the purpose of this deal yet, so he had already lost his patience. At that moment, the rabbit finally sighed and said, All right, I'll tell you, but you have to be sure that you can't do anything to me. After saying this, Lin Yuan recalled the bell in his hand. At this moment, with his action, the light emitted by the bell began to converge. The rabbit couldn't take it anymore. All right, I'm afraid of you. I can tell you the whole story, but originally, he wanted to talk about conditions, but when he thought of Lin Yuan's actions just now, he shut his mouth and didn't make any more sound. In fact, every floor of this pagoda is sealed with the body of a devil god. None of us can suppress this devil god. That's why this pagoda appeared. This pagoda is also the foundation of God worship sect. They sealed this thing and didn't want it to come out. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes. Since the people of the God worship sect didn't want this devil god to come out, it meant that they either had no way to completely eliminate this devil god, or they wanted to use this devil god for other purposes. When Lin Yuan thought of this, he sighed faintly. Previously, he felt that something was wrong on the first floor, but he wasn't sure what was inside. Now that he heard the rabbit say this, he naturally knew that the thing inside was definitely not as simple as he thought. When he thought of this, he nodded gently. So each floor seals a part of this devil god's body. As long as they are combined, they will be resurrected. Is this devil god right? Whether it was among these methods or other aspects, his conjecture should be the most appropriate. At this moment, after he finished speaking, the rabbit at the side finally nodded its head. In order to control this guy, our demigod sect invested a lot of effort. Although we can't see anything special at this time, this is still an elite of our god worship sect. Lin Yuan nodded gently, then waved at the rabbit. The golden light began to dissipate. Lin Yuan didn't want to use other means to deal with this guy. Since he already knew what he wanted to know, he naturally couldn't go back on his words. However, the rabbit didn't want to end this matter so easily. Just before it left, the rabbit suddenly threw one purple smoke ball after another behind it. When he saw this scene, Lin Yuan showed a hint of anger. It seems that you really don't know what's good for you. Since I've already let you go, you actually didn't think of escaping. Instead, you wanted to attack us. After he said this, the golden bell suddenly expanded and shone directly on the bald man's body. Then it slowly shrank. It was as if the rabbit could not withstand the pressure of the golden bell at all. He was about to explode. When he saw this change, Tai Danner, who was next to him, was shocked. He had never seen such a bloody scene. At this moment, he even thought of some other ways to deal with this matter. However, at this moment, Lin Yuan snorted coldly. It was also at this moment that the fog in front of them slowly dissipated, reflecting a sea of flowers. Lin Yuan's expression slightly wrinkled, and at this time, the small white snake on his wrist also stood upright at this moment. It was as if he had discovered a crucial problem, or sensed some danger. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. What's going on? It seems that the secret here isn't just on the rabbit. He immediately shook his head gently. It seems that this place is really interesting. Since it's a sealed demon god, let me see what kind of demon god is sealed here. After he finished speaking, he took a step forward. He directly crossed the boundary of the boat of the painted sea. At this moment, Tai Danner followed without any hesitation. Chapter 1249. Lin Yuan noticed the abnormality as soon as he stepped in. At this time, Tai Danner did not hesitate at all. After following Lin Yuan, he also felt that the surrounding situation was not quite right. Master, this seems to be a special formation. After Tai Danner finished speaking, Lin Yuan nodded gently. This is indeed a formation. Moreover, it's a formation that is extremely complicated. He was not joking because at this moment, he could see the difference in the array in front of him. It was as if a sea of confusion flowers had appeared in front of them. There were dangers hidden in the sea of flowers that they didn't know about. Even the path wasn't easy to see. Lin Yuan didn't want to say anything more at this moment. But at this moment, Lin Yuan found that the figure of Tai Gang next to him shook fiercely, and then the whole person disappeared in front of him. Lin Yuan was surprised. He didn't expect something like this to happen. However, after careful inspection, he found that there was nothing wrong with this kid. He just fell into a hole. The hole wasn't deep, but there were 5 colored crystals in it. Tai Tai held the crystal stones in surprise, and then said to Lin Yuan, who was outside the pit, "Master, what are these things? Why do they look so beautiful?" Lin Yuan did not speak because he could not recognize what it was. At this moment, the stones turned into a mass of gas and disappeared directly in front of the two of them. When he saw this scene, Lin Yuan was indeed slightly taken aback, not knowing what was going on. At this moment, Lin Yuan finally saw the crux of the problem. The thing that appeared in front of him wasn't anything else. It was a heavenly martial Azura. This was a kind of war god in the Tianwu world. They were extremely powerful. Almost no one could rival them. They were even stronger than the demon kings. However, he didn't know why these celestial dance shuras would appear here. Under normal circumstances, not only would they not appear here, but such a poetic place shouldn't have such murderous intent lurking in it. But just as he was wondering, Lin Yuan found that these heavenly martial Azuras had been resurrected. They had swords and sabers in their hands. They slashed at the two of them. Lin Yuan gently raised his eyebrows. Now that Tai Dan had rushed out, he directly blocked the attack of the Tianwu Azura in front of him. Seeing such a scene, Lin Yuan did not say much. Instead, he looked at him quietly. He knew that the strength of this heavenly dance Azura was tyrannical, but he also understood that Iron Chain was not as weak as before. Taidan's strength was almost on par with the Demon King's. He had already digested a portion of the energy he gave Taidan. But at this moment, Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes. He had been carefully observing the battle. He knew that if anything happened to Taidan, he would have to lend a helping hand. However, before he could do anything, Taidan's chest seemed to be burning. He charged at the heavenly martial Azura without any regard for his life. Under this continuous attack, there was almost no hesitation. Each attack was stronger than the previous one. When Lin Yuan saw this scene, he couldn't help but be stunned by his appearance. In his opinion, everything was given to Little Iron Egg by him. If Little Iron Egg didn't use his energy to improve himself, and didn't have the courage to face his enemies, then even if he gave him energy, he wouldn't be able to become stronger. Lin Yuan realized that not only was Taidan's talent outstanding, but his courage was also extraordinary. That was why he knew that at this moment, no matter what methods he used, or rather, whatever methods he had, he could leave them to him without setting up any defenses. The battle between Taidan and the heavenly martial Azura had already reached its climax. The heavenly martial Azura's entire body was steaming with blood. Taidan looked like an evil spirit from hell. Taidan stood where he was. His body was drenched in sweat. The two of them seemed to be standing on opposite sides of life and death. It was as if they were mortal enemies. The heavenly martial Azura charged again and again. Little Taidan blocked again and again. His small body carried an inconceivable amount of power as he charged at his opponent. Taidan didn't hesitate at all. His other methods started to become stronger and stronger. It was obvious that the heavenly martial Azura hadn't expected his attacks to be so powerful. Finally, Little Iron Egg let out a wild roar. His body began to emit waves of blood chi. The heavenly martial Azura was stunned. He opened his mouth and said in disbelief, "How could he be a natural-born Azura? This kid is actually a natural-born Azura." Before he could finish speaking, Lin Yuan frowned. He had overlooked this point. He hadn't expected that a random little boy would be able to secure such a huge guarantee in the borderlands. If Taidan was really a natural-born Azura, then his strength couldn't be measured by normal standards. However, it could also be that Taidan's cultivation method had taken effect. Otherwise, how could Taidan explode with such powerful combat strength? Taidan had to wait until he saw the results. After all, it was too early to draw conclusions. Lin Yuan had already grabbed a small stone in front of him with one hand. He didn't want anyone to disturb the battle between Taidan and the fifth Azura. From the looks of it, Taidan's combat strength was extremely strong. It was time for him to increase his strength. If he was disturbed by others, it would ruin things. When he thought of this, Lin Yuan's movements became a little gentler, and he was now staring closely at a few Azuras that appeared next to him. He knew that at this moment, if those Azuras really wanted to use some other method to win with numbers, he would definitely not hesitate to take action. Perhaps it was at this moment that a special pattern began to appear on the iron rod's body. These patterns seemed to have a special mark on them. The moment they appeared, they brought with them a majestic blood chi to attack Taidan's body. Then Taidan shouted. Chapter 1250. Little Iron Tower's movements started to become dazzling. His movements became faster and faster, and each move seemed to be a killing move. Everything about him seemed to be a memory engraved in his bones. His air attacks became more and more powerful. Even the Tianwu Azura couldn't resist. Finally, on that day, Azura was defeated. His blade had already shattered. Little Iron Egg, on the other hand, only relied on his fists. He had actually defeated the other party with brute force. When Lin Yuan saw this scene, he gently nodded his hand. "Well, go to the side and rest for a while. Leave the rest of these guys to me." As soon as he finished speaking, the Tianwu Azuras beside him pulled out their blades. When the defeated Tianwu Azura saw this, he sighed softly and turned to the Azuras behind him. "We've met a true Tianwu Azura. No matter how strong we are, we can't deal with him." When he finished speaking, he knelt down in front of Little Iron Egg. "Tianwu Azura, I look forward to the Azura King leading us back to the glory of the Azura race." When he finished speaking, he lowered his proud head. Lin Yuan didn't know how to react. Shouldn't someone of my status be unruly and unrestrained? Why did these guys submit so easily? He hadn't expected this. Little Iron Egg was even more embarrassed. He narrowed his eyes and turned to look at Lin Yuan. "Master, I want them to be my guards. I don't want those monster kings." When he finished speaking, he knelt down in front of Lin Yuan without any hesitation. When he saw this, Lin Yuan already had a plan. Since this kid had such talent, he would create an Azura city for him in this place. At the very least, he would be able to display his strength. No matter what, he would be able to balance this place. At the very least, this place would no longer belong to the God-worship church. When he thought of this, he prepared to make a move. However, at that moment, Little Iron Egg's face was filled with joy. He even reached out and touched the foreheads of the Azuras. Lin Yuan was puzzled. He didn't know what Little Iron Egg was doing. "Master, I am using my own methods to make them sign a subservient contract. This way, the contract between us will be unbreakable." When Little Iron Egg said this, it was as if he had already understood the situation thoroughly. At this moment, there was even a hint of pride on his face. Looking at this scene, Lin Yuan nodded gently. He knew that there was no need to discuss this matter any further. Since this kid already had his own plans and had the ability to recruit them as his subordinates, it would save him a lot of effort. "Well, in that case, tell me, where is the so-called demon god's body that is waiting here?" In his opinion, it was a good thing that such a thing could be hidden in this place. Apart from the tower guardian he encountered on the first floor, which was the colorful tiger, Zhang Heng was not interested in this thing at all. There seemed to be nothing else related to the Demon King. Therefore, he thought that if there were any special problems here, he could ask about the road construction immediately. However, he didn't expect that these Azuras would all shake their heads. "We don't know where the demon god's shell is. We're just some Azuras trapped here. If you want to understand what's going on here, you'll have to open up this sea of flowers. This sea of flowers is a formation." After saying this, these Azuras acted as if this matter had nothing to do with them. Lin Yuan was a little surprised. He didn't expect these Azuras to be so direct. They didn't even say anything when Little Iron Egg tried to interrogate them. It was as if they really didn't know anything about this place. Lin Yuan sighed softly. "Forget it. In that case, I won't get any clues even if I interrogate you. I won't interrogate you anymore." Of course, he knew that at this moment he couldn't get anything out of these guys. Therefore, he directly said this and left. He walked directly to the depths of the sea of flowers. Since he had to flip the entire sea of flowers to see the secret hidden here, he might as well do it directly. When he thought of this, he didn't hesitate and stomped his foot hard. With him as the center, a wave spread from his foot to the surroundings. It was like an arc of a circle. At this moment, the surrounding sea of flowers surged, and at the same time he saw one fruit after another appearing below. However, these Azuras looked like children. Lin Yuan was a little puzzled. He didn't understand what was going on at all. He even felt that these things were a little strange. Why would there be children under this boundless sea of fire? On the other hand, the Azuras shook their heads gently. This god-worshipping cult is really unscrupulous. They actually use humans as nourishment for these seeds. After saying this, the Azuras began to pull out the flowers and plants on the ground. Lin Yuan waved his hand to stop them. "Don't touch these flowers and plants first. I can use these flowers and plants to dig out the guy hiding here." After saying this, a rainbow-colored light lingered from his hand and fell directly on the flowers. Then, the flowers seemed to have a life of their own as they pointed in a direction. Lin Yuan shook his head gently. "It seems that you've hidden your strength well. But even so, don't you think that you're admitting defeat by not showing yourself?" The Azuras and Little Bruiser were stunned. They didn't react at all. What's going on? However, as soon as Lin Yuan finished speaking, a huge force surged out from his body. Then a rusty armor appeared in front of Lin Yuan. It was an extremely simple armor, and the person wearing it was an old man who had been hammering for a long time. This old man seemed to be unable to even hold a sword. Chapter 1251. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and sized up the old man in front of him. However, he immediately frowned, because he felt that this guy seemed to have undergone some other changes at this moment. The moment the Azuras next to him were about to rush up, Lin Yuan stopped them directly. "Don't move. They are no match for him. If I really went up at noon, I might not have encountered any problems." Even I was a little surprised by his method of connecting the straps. "Master, what exactly is this?" Lin Yuan smiled faintly. "I've encountered many interesting things here, but I didn't expect to encounter such an interesting thing." After he finished speaking, he squinted his eyes and walked forward. "You must be that demon god's armor and weapon," said the demon god. He directly said to the old man, who looked like he was about to collapse. Little Iron Egg and the Azuras were stunned. They didn't expect the old man in front of them to be the demon god's armor and weapon. Lin Yuan had seen many strange things. It wasn't the first time he saw an armor and weapon with a weapon spirit. Moreover, he could feel that this old man wasn't as simple as he thought. He could even take over a human's body to provide him with energy. Moreover, he could feel that the old man was desperately absorbing the energy from the old man's body. When he thought of this, his actions changed. He knew that the old man in front of him was definitely not ordinary. Moreover, he could clearly feel that the old man's surging energy wasn't something that an ordinary person could deal with. However, he didn't hesitate. He just sighed softly. "Since you're here, you can either submit to me or be killed by me." Lin Yuan's words weren't sloppy at all. After he finished speaking, the old man nodded his head slightly. He didn't make any sound as he flipped his hand and struck out with his sword. "I haven't fought with my master for many years. This time, I'll take it as my last contribution to the director. If I'm lucky enough to defeat you, sir, then please release my master no matter what." After he finished speaking, Lin Yuan just nodded slightly. He had long been prepared for this. At this moment, he didn't want to make any mistakes. Therefore, without any hesitation, he slowly walked towards the broken armor and the old man wearing it. The Azuras had indeed noticed the old man's actions. That's right, the sword drawing technique. One of the Shuras recognized the method used by the old man and was shocked. Of course, he knew that at this moment, no matter who it was, as long as they wanted to fight, they would have to use this method to fight the old man. The method that the old man was using at this moment was the strongest sword-drawing warrior that all warriors dreamed of. It wasn't just the Azuras. Even Taidaner was captivated. What kind of idea is this? To think that it would have such an imposing manner right from the start. In fact, it even makes me feel somewhat cold all over. It's as though I've been drenched from head to toe by the sword chi. Little Taidan couldn't help but mutter to himself. Lin Yuan, on the other hand, looked indifferent. He took a step forward, completely ignoring the guys beside him. When he took a step forward, his aura rose. At this moment, the old man couldn't help but narrow his eyes. He knew that the opponent he was facing this time was definitely not simple. At the same time, he didn't know how many times he had fought this demon god and how many tyrannical opponents he had encountered. However, at this moment, he couldn't help but feel excited. He was indeed using weapons and armor. But at this moment, all of his strength had already enveloped the other party. He didn't use any other means, he was just using his aura to suppress the other party. At this moment, the old man still couldn't pull out his sword. In the eyes of the Azuras, this was the most tyrannical sword move, but they couldn't use it. Lin Yuan's strength was just that strong. He was simply approaching the old man step by step, but the old man couldn't pull out the sword in his hand. The reason he used the blade drawer on the sword was to be able to kill with one strike. However, he now realized that he had no control over the weapon in his hand at all. He even felt that the sure kill move was completely useless. When he thought of this, he almost couldn't control his hands, which were trembling slightly. The armor started to creak. As Lin Yuan's footsteps got closer and closer, the creaking became louder and louder. When he saw this, Lin Yuan just smiled faintly. The old man finally pulled out the sword in his hand by an inch. The old man still wasn't confident. Although he was controlled by the weapon and armor, he was also an extremely powerful warrior when he was alive. He didn't expect to meet such a strong opponent at all. He knew that his realm was too far away from his opponents. He didn't even know what to do. At this point, Lin Yuan had already stretched out his hand. In the next moment, he was about to launch an attack. The old man sighed softly. He finally pulled out all his swords, but he didn't immediately attack the blade drawer. It had already been broken. Seeing this change, the so-called Azuras were all stunned. They didn't react at all. What was going on? But at this moment, Lin Yuan discovered a problem. No matter what, there was a faint light lingering on the old man's body. There should be more than just the weapon and armor of the demon god lying in ambush here. If that was the case, it wouldn't be enough for the weapon and armor to control a human, absorb his power, and control him. Lin Yuan suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed. Something seemed to explode on the old man's body. At this moment, everything that would happen in the future was revealed. Lin Yuan saw a crystal-clear heart floating in the center of the armor. All of this was because of this heart. This was the heart of the demon god. Lin Yuan smiled slightly. Just as he was about to reach out to grab it, he found that the armor and weapon in front of him were already surrounded by a layer of red light. Chapter 1252. Lin Yuan could clearly see the so-called demon god that appeared in front of him. To be more precise, it was a set of armor and a weapon driven by an unfamiliar heart. As for the person inside, he had already been absorbed by the unfamiliar heart. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly when he saw the layers of red light blossoming. It seems that every part of this demon god has been trained to a special level, Lin Feng said. As soon as he finished speaking, a few strands of special light flashed. Seeing this scene, Tai Danner's expression tightened slightly. He wanted to step forward and block in front of Lin Yuan. He knew that the special light was the demon god's attack, so he didn't dare to let his guard down. Seeing this kind of phone call, Lin Yuan gently waved his hand to signal her not to come over. You don't have to come over. I'll take it myself. After he finished speaking, he didn't hesitate at all. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the weapons in front of him. Clang! A crisp sound rang out. Lin Yuan's hand finally grasped the long sword, and he directly held the weapon tightly. Although you used to be an unfamiliar part, you're not anymore. You're facing me. If you continue to persist in going about things the wrong way, I'll kill you without hesitation. Lin Yuan's words weren't unreasonable. He did have the strength to do so. However, he didn't want to do so because in his opinion, if he could subdue a complete deity warden, it would naturally be an extremely wonderful thing for him. However, he didn't expect this guy's reaction to be different from what he imagined. The guy in front of him seemed to have gone crazy at this moment. He directly bumped into him. At this moment, the armor seemed to have displayed an unparalleled power. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. Naturally, he knew that at this moment, he needed to collect all of the demon god's organs in order to awaken the demon god. However, he was just curious about the demon god. If he wanted to be completely attracted to it, it would have to be at the level of the third demon king. He could sense that the demon god that appeared at this very moment should only be at the level of 2 monster kings. Therefore, he had already made a decision in his heart. He was considering whether he should directly take this demon god for his own use. As for Tai Dan, he already had his own guards, the Sky Martial Azuras. They were absolutely loyal to Tai Dan, a natural Azura. Therefore, they could not abandon this body. After Lin Yuan finished speaking, he released a powerful force from the mountain. He wanted to use this force to suppress the other party, so that the other party could feel his strength. At least this way, the other party would not be able to resist. But what he didn't expect was that this guy wasn't like before at all. Or rather, this demon god's heart already had some rebellious thoughts. And he didn't intend to continue like this. If you want to subdue me, you'll have to see if you have the strength to do so. After saying this, the long sword began to shatter into pieces. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan frowned slightly. Naturally, he could see that this guy was prepared to fight to the death with him. But at this moment, before Lin Yuan could do anything, the Sky Martial Azura beside him rushed out. Formed the Sky Martial Array. As soon as he finished speaking, an extremely violent force began to spread from the bodies of these people. This was not a special kind of power. Instead, it was like a shackle that controlled the heart of the demon god in front of them. Master, although this guy seems to be using the weapon spirits of these weapons, it's just a disguise. Because the most important thing is this demon god's heart. It's the source of everything. As long as you can subdue this heart, you can control the current situation. Lin Yuan didn't expect these Sky Martial Azuras to have such an ability. Then he realized what was going on. Because the Tim Wushura had been stationed here, they must be very familiar with this demon god's heart. If they had a way to control it, it was only natural that this guy would be able to do it. When he thought of this, Lin Yuan smiled. Alright, since that's the case, I'll use force to break the technique. When he said this, a rainbow-colored light appeared in his hand. Then he directly grabbed the heart. At this moment, the sword had already shattered. But at this moment, the armor revealed some of its formation. Streaks of light shone from the armor. However, these streaks of light were blocking Lin Yuan's attack. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan sneered and reached in directly. Of course, he knew that in this situation, he had no other way to solve the current trouble. At this moment, he had already lost his patience. He didn't want to wait any longer. He wanted to know what was going to happen. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan's expression became somewhat impatient. However, compared to Lin Yuan's methods, the armor's defense was really not enough. Not only was it not enough, at this moment, there was almost no way to make this guy in front of him actually reach this heart. This was the consciousness of the demon god. What demon god? Although his body was torn apart and scattered on every floor of the pagoda, he wasn't unconscious. In other words, he wasn't completely defenseless in his current state. However, when Lin Yuan stretched out his hand, he realized that all his hopes seemed to have been cut off. At this moment, he didn't hesitate at all. At this moment, all his expressions began to distort. In fact, Lin Yuan's performance at this moment could be said to be the proof. Because at this moment, his method actually broke the light and even shattered the armor. Then he grabbed the heart. I'd like to see how you can escape from my hands. After saying this, he finally stopped. Then, as the heart entered his hand, the sea of flowers disappeared without a trace. It was as if nothing had happened. Chapter 1253. When Lin Yuan turned his head again, he found that there was another path in front of him. It was a path that led to the next floor. This was another floor of the pagoda. Lin Yuan understood that if he wanted to collect all the demon gods' bodies, he had to go through the floors one by one. Therefore, he didn't hesitate and stepped forward. Little Iron Egg, who was behind them, was indeed hesitant. He could already see for himself just how powerful his master was. At the same time, he could clearly feel that if he didn't have the same strength as his master, he would only be a burden if he went up for a meal. Lin Yuan turned his head and found that Little Iron Egg wasn't following him, so he turned around. Aren't you going to follow me up and take a look? Lin Yuan's voice was cold. He naturally knew that although this kid was a destined Azura, there were some things that couldn't be changed. For example, this kid didn't want to go up any further. However, the heavenly dance Azuras beside him also stepped forward at this moment. Lord Supreme, please don't go up any further. If you go any further, you might face more than a simple battle. After he finished speaking, Lin Yuan just smiled. He already knew why Little Iron Egg changed his mind and didn't want to go any further. Little Iron Egg, do you know where your weakness is? Because you don't dare to take this step, your advancement will probably stop here. If you really want to stop here, then I won't force you. In any case, our fate as master and disciple ends here. Lin Yuan didn't need a weakling by his side. He also didn't want to find a weakling disciple who didn't even have the courage to challenge the pagoda. When he finished speaking, Little Iron Egg's expression suddenly hardened. Master, it's not that I don't want to go any further, but I'm afraid that my appearance will cause you some unnecessary trouble. After all, with your strength, if you want to wear it, it won't be afraid. But if you bring me along, I'm afraid. Although he didn't finish his sentence, Lin Yuan understood the meaning behind it. This guy was simply thinking about dragging him down. Lin Yuan smiled faintly. This is not something you should be thinking about. What you should be thinking about is how to increase your own strength and become a great help to me. He knew that if he wanted to turn this desolate city into a fertile land, he needed people who could use it. Now the little guy in front of him was a useful person, and he was also a disciple that he thought highly of. However, if he was really controlled by these secular ideas, then he would not be able to improve. Lin Yuan didn't want such a moldable talent to stop here, so he said those words. Little Iron Egg's expression suddenly became unusually solemn as he spoke. Since Master has said so, then no matter what, I will use my last bit of strength to serve Master. As he said this, he took the first step up the stairs without hesitation. Lin Yuan only smiled faintly. He naturally knew what this kid was thinking, but in his opinion, even if this kid had other ideas, he must restrain them at this moment. What he needed was not only this little iron egg, but also a person. He also needed other powerful helpers. Only then could he revive this ghost town. Lin Yuan already had a plan in his mind, so he walked step by step on this boundless ancient road. When he encountered this iron tower, he knew that this place was definitely not simple. At least, it wasn't like what he saw. This place was very likely a branch of the worshipping god Pope. Moreover, the reason why these people from the bad god religion set up this place so far away was to make it easier for them to control their fighting style. It felt like a village surrounding a city. After Lin Yuan climbed the stairs again, the scenery in front of him suddenly changed. His expression slightly changed because he found that what appeared in front of him was not the sea of flowers from before, but an ocean. It was a quiet and peaceful ocean, and countless rays of warm sunlight shone on the seaside. Lin Yuan felt relaxed and happy. Even if he knew that the scenery in front of him was fake, he didn't want to say it out loud. At least in his opinion, everything in front of him was enough to confirm that this place was definitely more dangerous than the previous floor. When it came to creating an illusion, the more realistic it was, the more powerful the creator was. Therefore, he was certain that the protector of this floor was many times stronger than the Sky Marshal Shura from before. This was because when he reached out to touch the water, he could even feel its warmth. This change more or less surprised him. To be able to purchase such a large scene, perhaps even the strength of the 3 demon emperors wouldn't be enough. He directly took a step forward. At this moment, Little Iron Egg was a little dazed. Master, what should we do in this boundless ocean? As soon as he finished his sentence, Lin Yuan gently nodded. Actually, we don't need any other methods. As long as we can use our own methods to cross over, it will be fine. Then a 7-colored halo appeared on Lin Yuan's hand, and it drilled under his feet. He controlled the 7-colored light and floated above the sea. When Little Bruiser saw this, he immediately became fascinated. Master, what method is this? Can you teach me? Although Little Iron Egg was a natural Azura, he was still a child. It was inevitable that he would feel like a child. Lin Yuan smiled and stretched out his hand. Another 7-colored halo floated under his feet. Give it a try. Don't fall into the sea. I'm not sure if there's any danger in there. When he finished speaking, he had already steered the rainbow light forward. Little Iron Egg carefully tested it for a while before gradually getting the hang of it. As for those Iron Blood Azuras, they had already drilled into Little Iron Egg's body. They had souls and existed in form. Therefore, they could directly drill into Little Iron Egg's body at this moment. This was actually beneficial to both of them. Lin Yuan didn't care too much. However, the moment they entered the sea, the waves began to surge. Chapter 1254. Seeing this, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He knew that there must be something else hidden here. The other demon gods were strange, so he wasn't in a hurry. Instead, he squinted his eyes and looked in front of him. Little Iron Egg, stabilize your body. Don't be scared. This thing is just a way to deal with us in this situation. After Lin Yuan finished speaking, Little Iron Egg's body became even more unstable. He wasn't familiar with controlling the 7-colored cloud, so his movements became jerky at this moment. Master, don't scare me. He was clearly not used to this method of walking on the waves on the sea. He even started to make mistakes again and again, almost falling into the sea. Lin Yuan just smiled. He knew that Little Iron Egg hadn't been tested enough. This situation was the perfect opportunity to test him. Therefore, he didn't hesitate at all. Gradually, at the moment of this change, Lin Yuan had already stretched out his hand and grabbed little iron egg in front of him. Control your emotions. Don't be scared by the scene in front of you. Otherwise, you won't be able to participate in the battle later. After saying this, little iron egg couldn't control his emotions anymore. Under such circumstances, it was already difficult for him to control his body. However, Lin Yuan's words made him lose his patience. Lin Yuan just shook his head when he saw this. However, the waves started to become more and more violent. It seemed that something under the water was desperately causing trouble for them, and even wanted to overturn them. Lin Yuan didn't say anything. His eyes were fixed on the water. He knew that the thing hidden under the water was definitely not that simple. At least, in his opinion, it definitely wouldn't be easy to deal with it. The demon god's heart had already caused such a big commotion. Now he could feel that no matter what happened at this moment, there should be traces to follow. However, all of a sudden, a tentacle stretched out. Lin Yuan frowned slightly. Why did this thing look so much like the special demon king he had fought before? It was the octopus demon king. He suddenly stretched out his hand and directly grabbed the tentacle. However, when he touched the tentacle suddenly sprayed out a kind of purple-red ink. Just by looking at its color, one could tell that it was highly toxic. However, Lin Yuan did use his own 7-colored light to form a light barrier, covering his hand and blocking the opponent's attack. Little Bruiser clenched his fists when he saw this. He knew from the very beginning that his appearance would bring trouble to his master, so he was able to remain calm. He wasn't too flustered, and had even calmed down a bit. He didn't say a word as he stood on the 7-colored halo. Lin Yuan had indeed broken a tentacle. The moment he stretched out his hand, the tentacle of the octopus broke. It seemed that the octopus knew that it was no match for him. Lin Yuan clearly felt that these guys were cunning. If he really let them go on like this, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to escape from here. When he thought of this, he didn't hesitate at all. This time, he was prepared to cover his whole body with the 7-colored light and plunge into the water. He wanted to see what was exerting pressure on him. However, the moment he covered his body with the 7-colored light, the waves directly slapped him like a golden wave. Not only him, but also Little Bruiser beside him. Lin Yuan also arranged a 7-colored light on Little Bruiser's body in the midst of the chaos. Only then did he know that this light could protect Little Bruiser's life. When he thought of this, he didn't hesitate at all. At this moment, he directly stepped out and dived into the sea. At this moment, he discovered that there were actually countless strange creatures under the water staring at him. He was also a little puzzled. He didn't react in time, right? What was going on? In his opinion, these underwater creatures shouldn't be so aggressive. However, when his gaze fell on the eyes of these underwater monsters, he knew that they must be controlled by the so-called demon god's body. This was because their eyes were flickering with a scarlet color. This scarlet color was the same as the color emitted by the demon god's heart. Seeing that he had already fallen into the encirclement, Lin Yuan was not nervous at all. He even felt that this so-called stranger was more or less a bit low. However, this method of controlling these sea creatures was really too low level. However, just as he was thinking about this, an extremely huge force suddenly enveloped Lin Yuan's body. Rather than saying that it was an enormous power, it would be more accurate to say that it was a massive shadow. The reaction was so huge that he didn't even have the intention to completely avoid it. He couldn't even avoid this shadow because this shadow was so huge that it had already covered a large area of the sea. At this moment, that guy suddenly opened his mouth, and a huge suction force directly appeared in the water. Even the water and Lin Yuan were sucked into the giant's mouth. Lin Yuan frowned slightly. With the protection of the colorful light, there was no problem at all. However, he didn't know what kind of creature he was in. But looking at the gorgeous internal organs and skin around him, he didn't know. He knew that this guy was at least a few dozen meters away. However, he suddenly had some special thoughts. Such a big thing, if he ate it, he was afraid that it would take a long time. However, he immediately erased this idea from his heart because the smell here was really not good. At this moment, at the moment when he was about to penetrate this guy's stomach, he found that there were shining gems one after another in this guy's stomach. These gems should be the essence of this thing's cultivation. Although Lin Yuan had no need for these things, and he didn't care about such things, Little Iron Egg really needed these things now. Lin Yuan didn't have any other thoughts at this time. He took a step forward and was ready to dig out a stone from this guy's body. However, when his hand touched this guy's internal organs, he found that something was wrong. Chapter 1255. Because the moment his hand touched this guy's body, it was as if there was a huge suction force sucking out the power in his body. It felt as if a needle had pierced into his body and extracted some blood. Lin Yuan's expression was a little ugly. He didn't expect that he would meet such a difficult guy and fail miserably at such an easy task. However, this gave him a special idea. Little Iron Egg was probably still lacking a set of armor. If he could kill this thing and use its body parts to make armor for Little Iron Egg, it wouldn't be a bad idea. Lin Yuan was angry when he thought of this. He tried to use the colorful light in his body to cut the monster's internal organs. However, he didn't expect the monster's internal organs to be so tough. Even he couldn't cut them open. The most important thing is that at this moment, without the slightest sign, this guy, that is, the body of this behemoth, actually began to twist, and then his internal organs also wriggled, as if to directly crush Lin Yuan. This made him feel a little passive, because at this moment, all his thoughts had already landed on this guy. After checking and understanding the situation, he should have a 90% chance of succeeding. However, he didn't expect to make such a mistake. Lin Yuan gently held his cheek with one hand. He was thinking about what to do next. He could clearly feel the strength of the monster's internal organs. He could even clearly feel that the monster was shrinking step by step, as if it was going to crush him. Lin Yuan suddenly took out the demon god's heart. This thing was so powerful. It must have something to do with the stranger's restaurant. However, the moment he took out the demon god's heart, the surrounding stones all rushed toward the heart in his hand. There was no need to dig them out. It was as if they belonged to the heart. Lin Yuan's expression froze. What's going on? Wait. He suddenly realized a problem. This seemed to be the demon god's blood. When the blood returned to the heart, it made the strange heart stronger. Lin Yuan didn't expect that taking out the strange heart would have such a benefit. However, he couldn't care less now. Since the strange heart worked, and the monster had this type of blood, he didn't hesitate to gather all of them together. At least this was of some use to him. Thinking of this, Lin Yuan, you will directly start to swim in the body of this giant. Of course, he knew that if he wasn't careful at this moment, he might not encounter any danger, but he would miss out on the things inside. He didn't want to get his hands on an incomplete demon god. He couldn't afford to lose even a little bit. Therefore, at this moment, he didn't have the slightest bit of hesitation. He almost went to every corner of this guy. Although this guy would absorb his power, after a while, he would use the power of this demon god's heart on himself. This was a balance. The monster would absorb his power, and the strange heart would absorb the monster's power. In the end, the heart would send the power to him. This was equivalent to a cycle. It was just a waste of one more process. Lin Yuan didn't think that the demon god's heart was the only thing in this place. Looking at the state of the previous layer, there should be some special secrets hidden in this place. For example, one of the demon god's bodies. However, he didn't know where the demon god's body was. He didn't know which part of the strange body was sealed in this layer. Therefore, it was no different from looking for a needle in a haystack. But just as he was deep in thought, he suddenly felt a clear impact coming from outside. Lin Yuan was a little puzzled. Logically speaking, in this place, in such a deep sea, such a behemoth should not be attacked. But why was there something constantly attacking him? And why was it that this huge monster was reaching out? Suddenly he thought of something. It was very likely to be Little Iron Egg. Although this guy had always been a little timid, he was always able to erupt with indescribable power at critical moments. Lin Yuan finally didn't want to hold back anymore. He knew that if he let Little Iron Egg continue to hit him, this kid wouldn't be able to withstand the squeezing power of the monster's internal organs, even if he had the protection of his rainbow energy. If this little disciple of his really died, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Without any hesitation, he rushed out of the room. At this moment he didn't hold back anymore. He punched the monster's inner skin from the inside. He didn't hesitate anymore. He was afraid that something would happen to his little disciple. If that happened, it would be difficult to deal with. Moreover, he only used his physical strength this time. He didn't borrow any other power. Therefore, even if the monster wanted to absorb the energy in his body, it wouldn't be able to do so. Seeing that it was being attacked from two sides, the monster finally couldn't hold back anymore. Then a stream of stinky liquid gushed out of its body. Lin Yuan originally wanted to smash the monster into pieces with his punches. However, he didn't expect that the monster would be so disgusting as to expel the stinky and sour digestive liquid. He didn't hesitate anymore. This time he directly punched the monster's skin with the rainbow light. Then he exerted his strength. In an instant, the monster's skin and flesh exploded. Then, a stream of blood gushed out of the monster's body. The seawater outside also washed away its internal organs at this moment. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and slowly walked out of the monster's body step by step. Outside was Little Iron Egg. However, the rainbow light on his body had become extremely dim, as if it was about to disappear. Lin Yuan smiled dotingly. "Silly boy, how can you be a match for him?" The moment he saw Lin Yuan, Little Iron Egg's face lit up with surprise. "Master, you're really here." After saying this, he couldn't hold back his emotions anymore. He directly pounced on Lin Yuan. At this moment, Lin Yuan just waved his hand gently. A light green light enveloped Little Iron Egg's body. Chapter 1256. The moment he saw Lin Yuan, a look of surprise appeared on Little Iron Egg's face. "Master, you're really here." After saying this, he couldn't hold back his emotions and directly rushed towards Lin Yuan. At this moment, Lin Yuan just waved his hand gently, and a light green light directly enveloped Little Iron Egg's body. "No matter what you want to say now, you can swallow it back." This sentence made Little Iron Egg feel strange. He directly rushed in to save him without caring about his own safety. Why was his master treating him so coldly now? Little Iron Egg didn't seem to understand what was going on at all. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan knew that Little Iron Egg had misunderstood. Because he knew that Little Iron Egg was with him, the two of them didn't have the leisure to care about love at all. There were many huge sea creatures around them. At this moment, Lin Yuan already knew that this underwater world was unusual. But he didn't expect Little Iron Egg to misunderstand him at this time. At this moment, a violent current directly swept towards the two of them. Lin Yuan directly pulled Little Iron Egg and dodged. Then he said indifferently, "Now is not the time to talk about this. There are still some special things here that we haven't dealt with yet." When he finished speaking, he had already rushed to the side. There were a few fishes that had grown human arms and bodies. These guys looked very powerful, but for some reason, Lin Yuan felt that they had a very similar aura to the devil god from before. It was as if these things were born from the devil god. However, Lin Yuan still frowned. He knew that the matter of the eye was definitely not that simple. But at this moment, he was already prepared. His movements began to become swift and fierce, and the surrounding special fish began to attack them on their own accord. Lin Yuan frowned. Although these guys' attack power wasn't strong, their attacks were extremely troublesome. Moreover, every attack could create a whirlpool underwater. Lin Yuan knew that the whirlpool was their attack method. They were doing this to disrupt his attack method. It was also to distract his attention. "Little Iron Egg, listen to me. These guys are not the ones who are mainly attacking us. There are other powerful creatures around us." Lin Yuan didn't hesitate. After saying this, he was about to do something else. But he didn't know when he was trapped in a cage made of water. Lin Yuan didn't seem to be able to react. They didn't expect these underwater creatures to have such intelligence. In such a situation, they had actually unleashed their most powerful strength. Furthermore, they had used a group attack to trap him here. Not only him, but even Little Bruiser had not been able to escape the calamity. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan's eyes slightly narrowed slightly. He could clearly see that these guys in front of him weren't just using this special method to attack. They were using the power of the sea. Lin Yuan frowned slightly. He naturally knew that in this situation, no matter what he did, There was no way to escape from here. The only thing he could do was to use force to break through. At that moment, waves after waves of water surged towards him. Little Iron Egg now understood why his master had told him not to speak. In this kind of crisis, speaking would only distract him. Therefore, Lin Yuan knew that they were doing this for his own good. When he thought of this, he couldn't speak. He could only stand there silently. Alright, I didn't expect that you guys would actually have such a method. However, if you think that this is enough to deal with me, you're underestimating me too much. After he finished speaking, he took a step forward without any hesitation. Right at this moment, the cage-like stream of water that had been condensed to the side had already been confined to the ground. It seemed like it wanted to firmly trap him there. Every movement he made would cause the water around him to resist. The resistance was very clear and powerful. Lin Yuan had never thought that he would encounter such a situation. However, he quickly calmed down and squinted his eyes as he looked at everything before him. Nobody responded to him, because all the creatures in the water were looking at him with extreme vigilance. In their eyes, this human was their mortal enemy, and the behemoth that should have been lurking here has not appeared yet. At least, Lin Yuan felt that this guy was more powerful than the other behemoths. He did not know how many times. Furthermore, he could sense that this creature had been waiting for him all this time. It clearly had ulterior motives. Lin Yuan's eyes started to look around. He knew that there was definitely something special in this place. However, this creature had yet to appear, which made him more or less puzzled. However, he immediately became vigilant because he felt that the changes in the water were becoming more obvious. The waves and vibrations seemed like something was about to come out from a certain direction. Little Iron Egg, who was watching from the side, was also a little nervous. Master, do you want me to release the Sky Dance Azuras and have a bloody battle with them? Lin Yuan shook his head. Although these creatures looked extremely ferocious, they couldn't do much in the water. Moreover, their methods weren't used underwater. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes. He had already come up with a countermeasure, but he was prepared to go deeper. He wanted this creature to come out by itself. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan's hand didn't even emit a bit of light. It was as if he didn't care about his surroundings at all. At that moment, a tall tortoise or a stone tablet slowly crawled over from not far away. The tortoise's movements seemed to be very slow, but with every step it took, its figure would leave behind afterimages. This thing should be the real deal. Lin Yuan smiled slightly. He had already seen the tortoise carrying the stone tablet. Chapter 1257. Lin Yuan wasn't nervous when he saw the old man, and he even had a smile on his face. However, Little Iron Egg wasn't as calm as Wang Yao. In his opinion, the behemoth-like old man in front of him was so powerful that it was terrifying. The old man's aura wasn't something that he could contend with. He even felt like he was just a little bug crawling under the other party's feet. Lin Yuan didn't have much to do, so he just quietly watched the old man approach him. He also absorbed all the pressure from the wall of water beside him. Finally, the old turtle said, "Do you think you can fight against us in a place like this? In the water, us water races are invincible." When the old turtle said this, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of water. The water was like a sharp sword, rushing towards Lin Yuan and Little Iron Egg. Seeing this, Little Iron Egg snorted and clenched his fists. He took a step forward and punched out. The water flow seemed to be unable to withstand his punch, and had already begun to appear. The depression had even formed a vacuum at this moment. However, Little Iron Egg was still too weak. At least, he was far from being able to compete with the behemoth in front of him. Lin Yuan directly fell in front of Little Iron Egg. Finally, the water collided with Lin Yuan's power. At this moment, Lin Yuan didn't hesitate at all. He directly took a step forward. "Old Wang, right? Do you really think that you're invincible when you're down there? I can tell you clearly that no matter what you think, you can't realize it at this moment, even if you think that you are an aquatic race." After Lin Yuan finished speaking, he fiercely clenched his fist. Then, outside the wall of water, a seven-colored light began to bloom. He had already prepared a backup plan. At this moment, he didn't hesitate at all and directly activated his hidden means. At this moment, The old turtle was also shocked. He didn't expect the human in front of him to be so terrifying. And it wasn't over yet. Lin Yuan just slammed the ground. And then a scorching heat rose up. And the space they were in instantly turned into a vacuum. Or rather, all the water was sucked away. The old turtle was also stunned for a moment. He didn't know how many years it had been since he went ashore. At this moment, he seemed to feel a little flustered as the water flow left him. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and smiled slightly. Without any hesitation, he stepped out of the world and punched the old turtle's shell fiercely. He could see that there must be something special about the 10 times, but he didn't want to think about it now. He just wanted to do his best to deal with this old turtle in front of him. After all, from his point of view, although it seemed like he was the one who was attacked and trapped, he knew that this guy's strongest point was his defense. Attacking wasn't his forte, and if he wanted to get through this, he had to defeat this guy. Moreover, he could also see that this guy in front of him should have the strength of 2 demon kings. Lin Yuan had just punched out, and the old turtle narrowed his eyes in an instant. Then Lin Yuan clearly saw layers of water flow begin to cover this guy's body, as if forming a layer of armor for him. Lin Yuan's attack was like a clay ox entering the sea. Seeing this change, Little Iron Egg's expression changed, because he could see that his master's current attack method didn't seem to be enough to destroy this guy in front of him. What could he do? He didn't have the strength to deal with this guy in front of him at all. If he really acted hastily, he was afraid that he would cause trouble for his master. Just as he was hesitating, Lin Yuan suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed at the stone tablet. Old turtle, I know that this 10 times is your lifeblood, and it's where the array formation is. If you still want to fight to the death with us, I will not hesitate to shatter this stone tablet of yours. At that time, everything here will be destroyed, and even you will disappear. Given Lin Yuan's experience, how could he not know that this guy in front of him must have some special problems? These problems appeared on the stone tablet. He also clearly felt that the demon god's heart in his hand had given him a hint at this moment. There must be another body of the demon god in this old turtle's body. Therefore, it was not convenient for him to directly kill this old turtle in front of him. He wanted to dig out the truth of this old turtle bit by bit. After all, this guy was not as simple as the armor and weapons he had seen before. He was just a weapon spirit, and he had been controlled by the demon god's heart. The old turtle in front of him was obviously a demon king. Therefore, he wanted to change to other methods and means, at least it wouldn't take so much effort. However, just as he was thinking about this, the old turtle snorted coldly. If you want to say that, then I have to thank you because I don't want to carry this equipment for the rest of my life. I don't know how many unfair things I've encountered because of this equipment. If you can, why don't you help me? It was obvious from what this guy said and did at this moment that he was messing with Lin Yuan's mentality. Seeing this scene, he just said softly, "In that case, I'll help you dissect it." When Lin Yuan finished speaking, he had already taken a step forward, because he could feel that the old tortoise that appeared in front of him at this moment was ready to attack. Suddenly, waves began to surge in front of him. The mist had long disappeared, and at this moment, Lin Yuan found that this guy could actually use the water to penetrate the vacuum defense he had set up and directly rush in. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. Good. I didn't expect you to have such a method. In that case, I won't stand on ceremony. After saying this, a brilliant sword appeared in his hand. At this moment, he directly held this sword in his hand and slashed the old turtle's shell in front of him, creating sparks. It was as if he had gone mad as he continued to attack without stopping. Chapter 1258. Lin Yuan then said to Little Iron Egg, "Kid, watch carefully. This is the willow sword dance of the wind. Although it's not a profound sword art, it should be the best for you to use it in your current state. Watch carefully." After he finished speaking, he took a step forward without any hesitation. Cold light flashed. The old turtle didn't have any means to restrain the guy in front of him, so he could only control himself and the flow of water around him. He could only defend. For him, this kind of attack had already broken through his cognition, and at this moment, Lin Yuan was only using 30% of his strength. Of course, This was to let Little Iron Egg learn this technique. He clearly knew that this guy's defense must be outstanding. The willow sword dance of the wind was actually suitable for Little Iron Egg's current sword art. That was why he took this opportunity to launch an attack with such a perfect sandbag. Little Iron Egg, who was next to him, was even more entranced. He didn't expect his master to be so powerful that he could still make such a move under such circumstances. Even that guy who could suppress him with just his aura didn't seem to have any power to fight back against his master's opponent. He was completely captivated by her beauty. It was because he had never seen such a constitution and method before. Moreover, he could clearly feel that at this moment, there should have been other ways to restrain his master. However, for some reason, the old fox just lay on the ground obediently and didn't dare to make the slightest move. Lin Yuan frowned slightly when he saw this. He still wants to resist. He had originally thought that he could use this opportunity to let Little Iron Egg learn more, but he hadn't expected that the old tortoise would actually think of another way. At this moment, rays of golden light flashed on the old tortoise's shell. This was the old turtle's special skill, the golden bell protection. At this moment, his whole body seemed to be wearing a layer of golden armor. Seeing such a scene, Lin Yuan just narrowed his eyes, and his movements were faster and more urgent. However, what he didn't expect was that at this moment, both the old turtle and the stone tablet on his body actually cracked. When Lin Yuan saw this scene, he was slightly stunned. He didn't expect such a change at this moment. His face turned pale as he looked at the tortoise. I didn't think that the stone tablet would be broken in the end. Earlier, he was clearly just bluffing. Once he left this stone tablet, he wouldn't be able to use any of his techniques. The scene in front of him made him turn his head slightly. All right, since you broke my equipment, I don't need to maintain this appearance anymore. After saying that, a red hair flashed on the stone tablet, and something floated in the water. Lin Yuan looked up and found that it was a skull made of white bones. He knew that it should belong to the demon god, but he didn't understand why it would appear at this time. Because in his opinion, shouldn't this thing be sealed in the old turtle's body? Why would it appear directly in this stone tablet? Lin Yuan frowned. No matter what, I can't be too careless. If I really destroy the demon god's head at this time, I'm afraid that everything will be in vain. All my previous plans will also come to an end here. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. He knew that this matter definitely wouldn't end so easily. However, the big turtle in front of him had now turned into a person. He was now holding a harpoon in his left hand and a shield in his right. And this shield was his turtle shell. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. He could see that this guy in front of him was going to fight to the death with him. However, the old tortoise's movements were far faster than he had imagined. At this moment, the old tortoise seemed to be even faster than when he was in the water. He stomped on the ground fiercely, causing the soft sand on the ground to explode. Then, the harpoon in his hand also stabbed towards Lin Yuan's body. Lin Yuan fiercely swung the sword in his hand. His sword just happened to touch the harpoon. And at this moment, the turtle shell shield in the old turtle's hand also began to spin rapidly in an instant. One blade after another spun out from below. Seeing this scene, Little Iron Egg, who was next to him, almost couldn't help but exclaim, "Master, be careful." But before he could finish his words, Lin Yuan had already punched the tortoise shell fiercely, and the tortoise shell shattered with a loud sound. Almost in an instant, it had already turned into fragments on the ground. When they saw this scene, the people around them couldn't believe their eyes. Instead of calling it a human, it was better to call it an aquatic creature. They simply couldn't believe that this big turtle, who had always been known to be invincible in front of them, would end up like this. Lin Yuan didn't say anything. Instead, he sighed softly. I didn't want to kill you directly, but you were the one who recklessly came to me. However, what he didn't expect was that this guy actually began to devour his turtle shell bit by bit, as if to replenish some kind of power in his body. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He didn't expect this guy to be so crazy in the past. He didn't give up even in this state. However, he discovered another scene. Because not far away, the demon god's skull floating in the water seemed to be sending waves of energy to the old tortoise. Lin Yuan finally knew where the problem was. It was the demon god's skull floating in the water. Without any hesitation, he rushed forward. Seeing this scene, the demon god's skull just floated gently, and then the surrounding aquatic creatures rushed towards Lin Yuan, as if they didn't care about their lives. When Little Iron Egg saw this scene, he couldn't bear it anymore. He clenched his fist and rushed over, ready to fight with these guys. However, Lin Yuan waved his hand and stretched out a hand. A colorful light instantly wrapped around his arm. At this moment, he seemed to be the absolute king of this underwater world, directly controlling everything. Chapter 1259. Lin Yuan's action caught the other guys off guard. At this moment, they felt that the world and the water that they relied on for survival had come to a standstill. It was as if this world didn't exist at all. Lin Yuan wasn't affected at all. Instead, he walked forward step by step. Seeing this, Lin Yuan seemed to have forgotten everything. He walked forward step by step, and even threw the sword to Little Iron Egg. With every step he took, the bodies of the surrounding marine creatures began to crack to different degrees. Blood had already dyed the sea here red. The old turtle tried to move, but his body was too weak. He couldn't move at all. Under such circumstances, he could only stare blankly at Lin Yuan. I thought this so-called deity warden's head would have some other means to broaden my horizons, but now it seems that it's nothing much. This wasn't a provocation. It was like a superior looking down on a subordinate. In this situation, no one dared to say a word because they could feel that the guy standing in front of them was like a master of absolute power. They had no chance of surviving under his hands. Every step Lin Yuan took could kill a marine creature directly. This was his method. Whether it was cultivation or strength, he was many times stronger than these guys in front of him. Therefore, at this moment, every step he took could affect these guys around him. Seeing this change, the old turtle sighed softly as if he had finally given up resisting. In that case, I won't resist anymore. I only ask that you let them live. So no matter what you want to do to me, I will cooperate with you. After saying this, Lin Yuan nodded in satisfaction. However, he didn't stop. He still took a step forward. He didn't stop until all the water channels close to the old turtle exploded. If you had said so earlier, you wouldn't have wasted so much effort, Lin Yuan said as if he had just swatted a fly. Then he turned to look at Little Iron Egg. He even waved his hand at him. Come. Little Iron Egg didn't know what to do. He walked over with the sword in his hand. Lin Yuan then pointed to the aquatic creatures next to him and said, "Kill them all for me." Not only did the turtle not react, but even Little Iron Egg didn't understand what was going on. What the hell is going on? Master, what do you mean? How come I don't understand? Lin Yuan just shook his head gently. You don't need to understand. You just need to do as I say. These guys dared to make a move against us. Death is their only fate. Lin Yuan's voice was cold and emotionless after he finished speaking. However, what he wanted was absolute control of this place. The fact that the vast ancient path had appeared in this place meant that there was something lacking about this place. If these fellows left, they would only cause trouble for Little Bruiser in the future. When he thought of this, Lin Yuan did not hesitate and immediately thought of this fate. However, when the old turtle saw this scene, he couldn't hold back anymore. He directly knelt in front of Lin Yuan. I beg you, as long as you let them go, none of us will stop you from taking a step forward. Lin Yuan shook his head. Kneeling under such conditions is meaningless to me. So what if you kneel? You won't be able to move me. When Lin Yuan finished speaking, he glared at Little Iron Egg fiercely. Why aren't you going? What are you waiting for? Now all the aquatic creatures were controlled by his absolute power. They were frightened, and no one dared to have any thoughts of resistance. After Lin Yuan finished speaking, Little Iron Egg finally picked up his sword and walked forward. He knew that this was a very important test for him. Therefore, at this moment, he decided to follow his master's orders. But as soon as he took this step, he realized that something was wrong. Because at this moment, when all of Lin Yuan's movements and actions had just appeared, the old tortoise was already ready to make a move. He wanted to rely on the strength of his two demon kings to self-destruct. Little Iron Egg didn't have much time to care about other things. He directly turned around and slashed his sword. He directly stabbed towards the old turtle. Lin Yuan stretched out a finger and pointed directly at the tip of the sword. I'll keep this guy for myself. You deal with the others. After saying this, one of his hands was ready to slap down. At this moment he finally spoke. I'll use the specific location of the other demon gods in exchange for a chance to live. What do you think? The old turtle finally said something that interested him. Lin Yuan looked at this guy with a smile. Then how can I be sure that what you said is true? You won't lie to me. When he said this, there was no other reaction. At this moment, he had already integrated all his thoughts into his actions. He grabbed the old tortoise by the neck. At this moment, the turtle shook his head gently. It's meaningless for me to lie to you now. Besides, you can also take my clansmen to the next level. Lin Yuan directly threw the old turtle to the ground. The moment the stone tablet was destroyed, the surrounding seawater had already evaporated. I don't think you have the guts to lie to me again. I'll spare your clansmen's lives. When he said this, Iron Egg finally breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan smiled slightly. He finally knew what he wanted to know. Finally, he looked at the old turtle. It's not impossible to lose their lives, but now you have to show me the way to the next level. Right now, he had no way of distinguishing where the entrance to the next level was hidden in this world that was already filled with seawater. And he was too lazy to think about it anymore. He just asked the old turtle to help him find the place and location. Hearing this, the old turtle sighed softly. Then he stretched out his hand and pointed. Then as soon as he appeared, he directly appeared in front of them. This is the passage to the next level. However, to enter the passage, you need to have a strong physical body. Otherwise, you won't be able to pass through here. Chapter 1260. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly when he heard that. This was because he could sense that even though he had obtained the God Fiend's head this time, he still needed to use some sort of method. That's right, but I'm afraid that I'll need some special methods to do what I need to do next, because what the old turtle said wasn't a lie. He could clearly feel the appearance of the vortex. The pressure was so great that he couldn't even react in time. However, right at that moment, the tortoise's gaze suddenly landed on Bruiser. He seemed to want to say something but stopped himself. However, I'm afraid this little brother won't be able to enter from here. His physical body isn't strong enough. He didn't say what he wanted to say. There was no need for him to say it. Everyone understood the meaning behind his words. Earlier, he had said that he needed a strong fleshly body, so he didn't want to let Little Iron Egg go in. Lin Yuan also turned his gaze and looked at Little Iron Egg next to him. Do you want to go in? This was an extremely simple action, but it stirred up endless waves in Little Iron Egg's heart. This was because he knew that if he wanted to go in, his master would let him in no matter what method he came up with. He had some doubts because he knew that he was too weak. Moreover, the old turtle should be able to tell that his current state wasn't enough to directly rush in. He gently nodded, then shook his head. Although I want to go in, with my current strength, I'm afraid it will be very difficult for me to display my strength in there, and I'm afraid I might not even be able to protect my own life. Lin Yuan frowned. I'm only asking if you want to go in, not if you can protect your own life. After saying that, Little Iron Egg's face was filled with joy. He immediately became excited. Master, are you saying that I have a way to go in from here? He had benefited greatly from this trip. Just by watching his master fight, he already felt that he had benefited immensely. Under such circumstances, how could he not want to take another step forward and continue to break through? Lin Yuan chuckled when he saw Little Iron Egg's expression. Of course, as long as you can freely use your own cultivation method. The Killing Will incantation he had given to Little Bruiser could allow him to use blood-dripping dash, and even reach a certain level of the undying bending body. However, a restriction like that wasn't enough to keep the little guy in check. He also knew that the little guy had such a reaction because he was worried that he would become a country bumpkin. That was why this guy spoke like that. However, when he saw this change, Lin Yuan sighed softly. From today onwards, you must remember that no matter what, You must come here with absolute confidence and caution. You must come here with the attitude of an expert. From now on, I will confer you the title of God. At that time, you will be in control of this situation. If you can't complete the task I give you, don't call yourself my disciple anymore. This was the last time Lin Yuan told Little Iron Tower. This was also the last time he could comfort his fragile confidence. After all, he did not need weaklings, whether in terms of mentality or strength. Hearing this, Little Iron Egg's expression suddenly turned solemn. He nodded his head. Of course, he knew that his master wouldn't lie under such circumstances. However, when he fully circulated the killing will incantation, he felt that he couldn't resist the power of the whirlpool. His entire body was rooted to the spot. He didn't know what to do. However, Little Iron Egg's helplessness didn't allow Lin Yuan to comfort him again. Lin Yuan didn't even look at him. Lin Yuan's actions were to tell Little Iron Egg that he had to face the situation by himself no matter what. No one else could help him. Under such circumstances, no one could help him. Lin Yuan didn't say anything when he saw this change. Instead, he sat quietly at the side. He knew that Little Iron Egg still needed some time. A normal old man would also sit cross-legged on the ground. Although Little Iron Egg had transformed into his human form, there was still a faint turtle shell on his back. Seeing this, Lin Yuan smiled gently. He knew that the old turtle wasn't very confident, so he directly went up to the next floor. He was sure that the old turtle didn't know what would happen up there. So at this moment, the old turtle was condensing his strength. Lin Yuan waited quietly. If Little Iron Egg didn't have absolute confidence, he knew that there would definitely be some special problems. When he thought of this, he no longer hesitated. Or rather, it was useless to hesitate now. At this moment, all his thoughts were on himself. He was thinking about another matter. When he obtained the 2 organs, he also left the demon god's armor and weapon behind. However, these were only the essence of the armor and weapon. These were 2 special gems. They were the same as what he saw in the stomach of the sea monster. However, he was now thinking about another matter. How could he gather all these things? What would happen after that? He didn't believe that the demon god would let others take away his organs so easily. Since Little Iron Egg had already cultivated to the point where he could live with his own organs, he must have extraordinary strength. Even if he was just a second medicine king, he must have some strength. While he was thinking about this matter, Little Iron Egg suddenly stood up. His body was covered with blood mist. At this moment, he looked like a real Azura, standing there with awe-inspiring killing intent. When you saw this scene, Lin Yuan knew that Little Iron Egg's current physical condition had become a special state. As long as he could complete the next step of his plan, his cultivation method would be considered a great success. At that time, no matter what kind of opportunity there was, Little Iron Egg would grab it in his hands. Thinking of this, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He could feel that at this moment, no matter what, there was no way to stop him from moving forward. On the side, Little Iron Egg narrowed his eyes and glanced at Little Iron Egg. He didn't say a word. Chapter 1261. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and looked at them. The 2 of them said, "Since you're all ready, let's leave now." He was ready, but at this moment the old turtle said, "Wait a minute, I still have some things to take away. Since I'm already a rebel, I might as well call for a more thorough appeal here. As long as this session is destroyed, the ones below won't be able to maintain." After saying this, he began to move. Seeing that this guy began to find all kinds of strange things in this session, Lin Yuan finally understood that there was another formation hidden here. Even if someone destroyed this place, it wouldn't take long for this place to be restored to its original state. This was an extremely powerful formation. If it was someone with an ordinary cultivation base, they wouldn't be able to do this at all. Lin Yuan could naturally see that this old turtle didn't leave any way out. He must have made up his mind to leave with him. Moreover, in this state, he was also considering what would happen if he really entered the next floor. At this moment, the old turtle narrowed his eyes slightly. "Someone from above sent something down to deal with me." As soon as he said this, thunderclouds rolled in the sky of this session. Lin Yuan frowned and looked at the sky. He could see that there seemed to be something accumulating power in the sky, and the center of these thunderclouds was the vortex. When he saw this scene, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. I think they don't want us to enter the next floor, but the more they do this, the more curious I am. After saying this, he took a step forward. At this moment, he almost didn't have any special thoughts. He just wanted to enter the next floor. However, since the other party could make such preparations, they must have made some other arrangements. Lin Yuan took the first step forward. As expected, the moment he was about to step into the vortex, all the thunderclouds suddenly released thunderbolts at the same time and surged towards him. These bolts of lightning were like spiritual snakes, almost swallowing it whole. Lin Yuan just narrowed his eyes. He directly used his body to withstand these thunderbolts. Immediately, all the thunderbolts seemed to have no effect at this moment. Or rather, the moment they came into contact with his body, the light of these thunderbolts was directly absorbed. Whether it was Lin Yuan or some other people, they could clearly see the scene that appeared in front of them at this moment. Without the slightest hesitation, the old turtle stepped forward and said, "Mister, you're really something. You're actually able to withstand the lightning. You should know that this is the technique of a 5 lightning celestial immortal." 5 thunders celestial? Lin Yuan frowned slightly. He had never heard of this name before. Little Iron Egg, on the other hand, trembled involuntarily when he heard it. Are you talking about the ancient evil god, 5 thunder celestial immortal? He had heard of this name before, because there was a legend about this 5 thunder celestial immortal in their family, and even in the general knowledge. This guy was said to be both good and evil. At this time, his strength was unpredictable and unfathomable. Everyone who heard his name involuntarily took a step back. At this moment, Lin Yuan just smiled slightly when he heard this name. I'd like to see how powerful this so-called ancient evil god, the so-called celestial immortal, is. After saying this, he took a step forward without any hesitation. He even released a 7-colored light in front of him. He wanted to see how much difference there was between his strength and this so-called 5 thunder celestial immortals. Of course, this guy was stronger than him. At this moment, Little Iron Egg seemed to be unable to control his emotions. He stepped forward and said, "Supreme Being, let me have a try. I don't think this is called strength. Moreover, I feel that my cultivation method has reached a threshold and needs an opportunity to break through. Why don't you give this opportunity to me?" After he finished speaking, he ignored Lin Yuan and the old tortoise next to him and walked out directly. Seeing such a scene, almost everyone was stunned for a moment. At this moment, Lin Yuan just took a few steps back. Looking at Little Iron Egg rushing up directly, he finally felt a little satisfied in his heart. It seemed that his previous words were not in vain. This little guy finally reacted. The fact that he was able to rush forward in one step meant that this kid had already made up his mind and had some confidence in himself. In this state, no matter what this kid did now, he wouldn't be surprised. At this moment, Lin Yuan's every move seemed to have a profound meaning. Although he allowed Little Iron Egg to rush forward, he had to leave some experts behind to prevent any accidents from happening to Little Iron Egg. However, at this moment, the thunderbolts seemed to be angered. They looked at Little Iron Egg as if they could no longer control their emotions. This was a baptism of thunderbolts. It was as if the thunderbolts began to spread all over his body and didn't stop at all. Lin Yuan had been watching all this. He knew that this kid was far from reaching his limit, but the old turtle was indeed a little worried about the current situation. This was because cracks had begun to appear on Little Iron Egg's body. These cracks didn't show any signs at first, but as more and more cracks appeared, the blood on his body began to form a special mist around him. The more it was like this, the more powerful the thunderbolts became. Little Iron Egg didn't know what to say when he saw this scene. Everyone could see that he was just barely holding on. At this moment, all of his movements, even the slightest movement, would trigger the thunderbolts. There was no room for him to move at all. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He could clearly see what was happening in front of him. It wasn't like what he had imagined at all. He could even feel that this attack wasn't very pleasant. Little Iron Egg's strength couldn't be stopped at all. If he didn't take action now, Little Iron Egg might die here. Just as he was about to make a move, Little Bruiser let out a roar. "Hey, Little Bruiser!" Chapter 1262. A roar shook the surroundings. At this moment, Little Iron didn't give his opponent any chance to retreat. He directly ran up and began to suppress the thunder. At the same time, the Tianwu Shuras in his body appeared beside him. They seemed to be gathering power to help Little Iron Egg fight against the thunder. Little Iron Egg was covered in blood, but he didn't step back. Step by step, he stood in the middle of the vortex. At this moment he suddenly turned his head. "Master, am I qualified to be your disciple?" After finishing this sentence, there was a sudden change in Lin Yuan's face. He could feel that Little Iron Egg seemed to have unleashed all his power at this moment. At this moment, Little Iron Egg took a step forward fearlessly. It was obvious that Little Iron Egg was no longer the little guy who could only lean on him. This change shocked the old tortoise beside him. He didn't expect that this little guy could unleash such a powerful force at this moment. At this moment, he even felt that everything was making him feel small. The strength of this little guy in front of him completely surpassed his. At this moment, even he didn't dare to stand in the middle of the thunder in such a wild manner. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and smiled. Then he glanced at the guy next to him and said, "It seems that things have come to this point. Then, we have a chance to deal with this guy in front of us." After saying this, he didn't hesitate at all, and directly rushed towards the guy in front of him. He could clearly see that Little Iron Egg was actually helping him resist the most powerful thunder in the vortex in front of him. "Good boy, I didn't misjudge you. If you continue to maintain this enthusiasm for battle, I have a hunch that when we go to the next level, we will definitely encounter difficult battles. At that time, you will be able to play your role." After saying this, Lin Yuan didn't look at the old turtle behind him anymore. He stepped into the vortex. Little Iron Egg seemed to have received approval at this moment. He directly nodded. At this time, the old turtle directly followed. He knew that in his current state, there was no way he could resist the lightning that appeared. If they really walked in, they would probably be attacked by the so-called Five Thunder Celestial Immortal. He didn't want to lose his life at this moment, so he directly prepared to close the vortex at the last moment. At that time he could escape. He didn't want to lose his life for two strangers. However, at this moment, Lin Yuan's movements changed. Just as this guy was about to leave, a hand suddenly grabbed him by the neck and pulled him in. "Things have already come to this point. Do you think you can just walk away?" Lin Yuan's voice was a bit crisp. At this moment, he didn't have any other thoughts. He just wanted to solve the matter in front of him. When he found that the guy behind him had other thoughts and actions, he didn't want to let him live at all. Because he could feel that this guy's thoughts were too strange, and his temperament was also unstable. Who knew when such a person would become a traitor? If that happened, it would be difficult to clean up the mess if he really caused some trouble. After all, he wanted to build a city for himself in this wasteland. Although he might not be completely honest, at least it would make everything look better and leave him a way out. Of course, this was also another way to expand his territory. However, he didn't expect the old turtle to have the intention to rebel from the very beginning. Little Iron Egg snorted coldly. Just as he was about to kill him, he realized that the scene around him had changed. It was a patch of dusky yellow land. The land was full of sand dunes. Beyond the sand dunes was the endless sky. Above the sky, there were layers of twinkling stars. Lin Yuan looked at this scene and knew that the secret of this layer was probably hidden in these stars, but he did not know what the other party was thinking, nor did he know what the other party wanted to do, nor did he know where the other body of the demon god was hidden. Seeing that Little Iron Egg was about to attack the old turtle, he directly reached out and stopped him. "Don't attack him first. He's the only one who knows the whereabouts of the demon god's body. I want to restore the demon god." After he said this, Little Iron Egg snorted coldly, and finally let go of his hand. He turned to look to the side. Seeing this, Lin Yuan looked at the old turtle and said softly, "You see, if we want to, we can take your life anytime and anywhere. So you'd better cooperate with us. Otherwise, I don't know what my disciple will do." After he finished speaking, he couldn't be bothered to say anything else. And at this moment, the old tortoise finally nodded. At this moment, his face was ashen. At this moment, he didn't have any other ideas. He knew that the man in front of him would definitely do what he said. The little guy next to him was already like a wild beast. If the man really gave the order, the little guy would probably tear him to pieces without hesitation. Thinking of this, the old turtle finally nodded in a hurry. I promise I won't be disloyal again. However, the scattered star world isn't that easy to break into because this place is completely different from my place. There are 3 demon kings gathered here. After he finished speaking, Lin Yuan's interest was immediately piqued. It was very rare for him to encounter 3 demon kings above the demon king realm. At this moment, if he could meet such a guy here, he would naturally take him under his wing without hesitation. Little Iron Egg seemed to have suddenly realized something, or smelled something special. Master, there seems to be something hidden here that is watching us. Do you want me to pull them out now? After saying this, Little Iron Egg was ready to attack without any hesitation. However, Lin Yuan still shook his head. Don't waste your energy. Let him go. After saying this, he directly pointed at the old turtle. Hearing this, the old turtle's face immediately turned pale. Chapter 1263. Having lived in this inverted tower for a long time, he naturally knew what kind of things were hiding here. He also knew clearly what the consequences would be if he fought with the other party here. However, he quickly looked at Lin Yuan in front of him and hurriedly spoke. Mister, these things are not something that I can fight against. They are all demon kings here. However, they are under the control of the 3 demon kings and obey their orders. I am no match for them. Lin Yuan frowned. He didn't expect this guy to be so arrogant. He actually used these monster kings as servants. However, he immediately checked the surrounding desert. He was sure that these so-called monster kings were hiding here. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and said to the people around him, If I'm not wrong, your strength shouldn't be enough to fight against me. Why don't you show yourselves and let's have a talk? However, as soon as he finished speaking, a scorching force suddenly flowed back and forth in the desert. At this moment, Lin Yuan could also clearly see that above the stars in the sky, there was a little starlight falling, which happened to shine on the monster king who had just attacked. Only then did he realize that the monster king in front of him was actually a desert scorpion. Such a scorpion hiding in the desert could actually become a monster king. This surprised everyone. However, the old turtle's expression quickly changed. This guy is too strong. If we really deal with him using this method, I'm afraid we won't have a good ending in the end. After saying this, Lin Yuan suddenly narrowed his eyes and looked in front of him. There was something special in front of him. It was a few tricks that Little Iron Egg had left behind in the lightning. He rubbed his hands together. It was just a simple movement, but there was a trace of blood on his hands. This was his threat, but it was also his method. The old turtle's panic formed a sharp contrast with Little Iron Egg's performance. Lin Yuan didn't care about the two anymore. Instead, he stepped directly in front of the huge scorpion. He didn't even care that the scorpion's pair of huge pincers were already waving at him. Little Iron Egg didn't hesitate. Just as the opponent was about to attack, the blood-red lightning in his hand flew out. There was no sound at all. After a series of crackling sounds, Scorpion, who seemed to have been tortured terribly, fell limp to the ground. However, it was still trying its best to raise its pincers, as if it wanted to continue attacking. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. Looks like you still haven't given up. When he finished speaking, Little Iron Egg was ready to launch another attack. However, Lin Yuan stomped his foot at this time. The next moment, all the demon kings revealed their figures on the ground around them. Their strength was not enough to reach the demon king realm. What truly allowed them to possess such strength was the starlight that shot down from the sky. He knew that the scene in front of him was not the true strength of these fellows. Little Bruiser had truly raised his killing intent tactics. At this moment, his attack was naturally unstoppable by these fellows. He stomped his foot to shake all these things out. At least, he couldn't let them continue to hide like this. Little Iron Egg snorted coldly. Master, do you want me to kill them now? After he finished speaking, the fellows at the side all frowned coldly. They didn't believe that this little brat in front of them could deal with them. They even felt that they could eat this little brat at any time. However, it was obvious that they had misjudged Little Iron Egg's strength. At this moment, everything seemed to have gone up in smoke. Lin Yuan's actions seemed to be telling everyone that although he was strong, his little disciple was no pushover. It was also at this moment that Little Iron Egg finally began his killing journey. He couldn't help but launch his own attack, and the movements and methods of this attack were a little shaky at first, but slowly he began to become skilled. He was indeed a natural Azura. The strength that he displayed at this moment was not something that others could imagine. Lin Yuan didn't use any of his methods. He seemed to be helping Little Iron Egg determine his target. When the old turtle saw this, he naturally knew that these small fries were no match for him. However, he was happy to be idle now, so he watched the show from the side. As soon as Lin Yuan's action appeared, the other guys had already attacked Little Iron Egg. Lin Yuan didn't pay attention to it. Instead, he quietly glanced at everything around him. Then the old turtle actually saw through the intentions of these guys at this moment, and then threw out his turtle shell. This time, it happened to block Little Iron Egg's back. It protected her from a special Demon King's sneak attack. At the same time, the other Demon Kings all turned to the old turtle. You old bastard, you actually betrayed us and helped an outsider. Do you know how powerful that demon god is? Your actions alone are enough for him to suppress you and make you unable to reincarnate forever. Lin Yuan coldly snorted. At this moment, Little Iron Egg also spoke. Then aren't you afraid that my master will suppress you and make you unable to reincarnate forever? Little Iron Egg's voice seemed to come from the depths of hell. It was also at this moment that he sent out all of his attacks. Streaks of red lightning began to drill out of his body. At this moment, his eyes were bloodshot as he approached the guys in front of him step by step. The Demon Kings around him had already begun to retreat. The Sky Martial Azuras around him involuntarily revealed themselves, as if they didn't want to hide at all. The moment this happened, Lin Yuan smiled. He knew that from today onwards, Little Iron Egg had grown. This guy would definitely become a big confidant of his. With this kind of strength and a natural Azura, no matter what method he used, he would definitely be able to stimulate his bloodthirst. When that time came, he would be able to directly attack the 3 Demon King Realm fellows once his strength improved by another step. Lin Yuan's expression was somewhat hesitant. He could clearly see the special changes in front of him. Chapter 1264. Although he didn't want his disciple to be a weakling, he didn't want his disciple to become a person who had lost his conscience because of killing. He was testing whether Little Bruiser could suppress the desire to kill in his heart. Therefore, he didn't do anything else. Although he had kicked out all the demon monarchs, he wanted to test Little Bruiser's temperament. At this moment, no one would be able to stop Little Bruiser's actions. Little Bruiser was getting more and more excited as he killed. He began to find his targets and threw himself at them one by one. Blood had already dyed his whole body red. However, not only did Little Bruiser not stop, but his body seemed to have stopped for a moment. Lin Yuan shook his head when he saw the changes in front of him. The old turtle looked at him in surprise. He didn't know what was going on. It was also at this moment that a special existence suddenly appeared one after another. At this moment, almost everyone could clearly see that the one who appeared in front of them was not a child, but a killing god. Lin Yuan also narrowed his eyes slightly. He knew that as long as one practiced this kind of martial arts, it was easy to be immersed in the pleasure of killing. Moreover, this kid was a natural Azura, so at this moment, he couldn't stop it no matter what. Because once this kind of human intervention was stopped, this kid would probably not have any promotion in his life. He could only rely on his physical strength to barely survive. However, this wasn't the result he wanted. He wanted to build a city here. A city where Little Bruiser was a god. However, as the screams continued, the low-level monsters began to fall into a disadvantageous position. They began to flee. They weren't a match for Bruiser at all. How could they not run? Seeing this scene, the old turtle asked, Why do you have to let him carry out such a massacre? Such a massacre is meaningless. Lin Yuan just turned his head and glared at him. Do I need you to teach me what to do? After he finished his words, the old turtle immediately shut his mouth. He knew that he couldn't afford to offend the man in front of him. He also knew that if something really went wrong at this moment, he might not be able to solve it. Thinking of this, the old turtle didn't dare to do anything else. He just wanted to wait there obediently. After all, he couldn't understand these things, let alone stop them. However, he didn't feel good looking at the dead monster kings. After all, these were all his former comrades. But now, they had all lost their lives. Lin Yuan just looked at it gently. He didn't care what the old turtle was thinking at all. He didn't even look at the old turtle's appearance. At this moment, Little Iron Egg seemed to have finally woken up. He quickly stopped his movements and began to pant heavily. His entire body seemed to have fallen into a special state, and at this moment, he finally recovered. Although his eyes were bloodshot and his hands were still trembling, he still turned his head to look at Lin Yuan. Master, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel like I can't control myself at all? It's as if there's a fire burning in my chest. I want to kill everything in the world. After he said this, his hands trembled even more violently. It was as if he wanted to erupt with all his power at this moment. He wanted to directly launch all his attacks at this moment. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan just shook his head gently. This is the side effect of your cultivation method. If you can't withstand this change, no matter how I teach you, you won't be able to advance at all. After saying this, he didn't hesitate at all and directly said to the guy in front of him, "Look around you. Everyone died because of you. Do you feel guilty because of these people?" Lin Yuan's move was a test to see how much his mood had recovered. Little Iron Egg decisively shook his head. "No, I just feel more excited, especially when I see blood." At this moment, the sky martial azuras around him slowly reappeared. At this moment, their eyes were also bloodshot, as if they had been stimulated by the blood and exploded with monstrous killing intent. Lin Yuan understood that with these sky martial azuras around, no matter how Little Bruiser wanted to control them, he had to get their permission first. These guys were now filled with killing intent, so Little Bruiser simply couldn't control them with his own strength. Looking at the appearance of Little Iron Egg at this moment, who had become more and more dispirited and unable to control himself, Lin Yuan sighed suddenly. Although he thought that this kid had a high chance of becoming his confidant, he would not change his mind at this moment no matter how many people there were, and how many things were going to influence him. If Little Bruiser couldn't withstand it, then he would have to give up. He would have to give up on this person who could only get lost in the slaughter. However, at this moment, Little Bruiser roared furiously. His arms trembled more and more violently. "No, I can't continue like this. I can't be controlled by killing." He seemed to have realized his problem. Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly. He knew that Little Bruiser must have realized the crux of the problem. However, he didn't know what kind of power was supporting Little Bruiser. After all, ordinary people couldn't control their emotions. At this moment, it was as if he was controlling all of his strength at this moment. At the same time, he also gathered his willpower. Lin Yuan smiled gently. "You should know that killing intent is your weapon. You have to treat your weapon well. You can't be controlled by them. They should be controlled by you." After Lin Yuan said this, Little Bruiser's expression became somewhat fascinated. However, he immediately began to control his killing intent. Then, a blood-red spear suddenly appeared in his hand. Seeing such a scene happen, Lin Yuan suddenly smiled slightly. "It seems like you can control it now." Little Bruiser also smiled. However, he knew that this was only the beginning because his transformation wasn't complete yet. Chapter 1265. At that moment, a mass of blood energy began to condense around his body. Then everything about him began to change. One after another, blood-red armor appeared on his body. Every piece was bright red, as if they should have appeared on his body in the first place. On the side watching this scene, the old turtle suddenly realized why Lin Yuan didn't say a word just now and just quietly watched all this happen. He also understood what kind of person appeared in front of him at this moment. This was simply an evil spirit from hell. However, this evil spirit had his own consciousness and obeyed the orders of others. He really didn't know what to say about raising such a powerful person. He looked at Lin Yuan in shock. "You've basically raised a killing machine for you," said Lin Feng. "What's so bad about killing?" Lin Yuan turned to look at the old man. He understood better than anyone else when it was better to use slaughter to solve a problem than to use other methods. Not only did he understand this matter for the first day, but he also had the map that could confer godhood in his hands. The world was vast, and everything was about fighting over the offerings of mortals. Therefore, if he wanted to carve out a territory of his own, he had to turn everything here into his own territory. Or rather, he had to make everyone submit to him unconditionally. The vast ancient path was just the beginning for him. As for Little Iron Egg, he was the first god here that he looked down upon. The old turtle was still sighing, but Little Iron Egg had already taken a step forward. The monsters and demon kings in front of him didn't know what to say. They even felt themselves trembling involuntarily. Little Iron Egg suddenly turned to look at Lin Yuan. "Master, what should we do with them?" Lin Yuan turned his head and glanced at the old turtle on the side, then said lightly, "These minions have suffered heavy casualties. Why haven't I seen the real boss come out yet?" When he heard this, the old turtle was a bit stunned. He didn't understand what the boss meant. "You're saying?" Before the old turtle could finish speaking, a cloud of dust rose up. At this moment, there was a burst of smoke and dust in the sand, and then Lin Yuan saw an extremely vague figure appear in front of him. It wasn't a demon king who looked extremely strong. It was a guy wearing a black robe with a red lotus embroidered on it. This guy covered his face with black gauze and held a knife in his hand. When he saw this guy, the old turtle's expression suddenly changed. He knew he wasn't a match for this guy, and he knew that this guy was the absolute king of this place. This was the demon king of the desert. He was the ruler of all the demon kings in the desert. He must be the mastermind you were talking about. Lin Yuan looked at the guy in front of him. He could feel that this guy was like an unsheathed sword, showing off its sharpness. Little Iron Egg's eyes were burning with the desire to fight. The moment this guy appeared, he wanted to rush out. But Lin Yuan, who was on the side, stopped him. "Do you know the whereabouts of the demon god's body?" After he finished speaking, the black-clothed man next to him coldly snorted. "Even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you. If that thing is released, what awaits the human world will be a catastrophe. I absolutely won't allow that to happen." But after he said this, Lin Yuan burst out laughing. "I thought you had a good excuse. I didn't expect it to be such a lousy one." Naturally, he looked down on the guy in front of him. In his opinion, this guy could have openly stated his purpose long ago, but he didn't. He only talked about how selfless he was. "Then don't tell me you're doing this for the human race. Otherwise, why do you have to control this place? Why don't you just destroy this demon god?" Lin Yuan didn't want to expose this guy, but after seeing how this guy was so arrogant, he finally couldn't help it. In this place, anyone could tell that they were ordered by some big shot to stay here and guard the demon god's body. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to live aimlessly in this situation. At this moment, he could feel that this guy in front of him actually found such a grand reason to say that he was doing this for the human race. As soon as Lin Yuan finished speaking, the guy pulled out his knife. At this moment, he knew that it was useless to talk nonsense, so he was ready to fight. Seeing this, before Lin Yuan could move, Little Iron Egg had already rushed up. The weapon condensed from killing intent directly collided with the guy. But before the weapons collided, Lin Yuan had already stepped between the two of them, and then gently shook his hand. The weapons of the two people instantly separated. Lin Yuan sneered, "He's just my disciple. Aren't you disgracing your own reputation by bullying him like this? Since you said you're doing this for the human race, then let's have a good fight." After saying this, he no longer had any reservations in his heart. At this moment, he just wanted to directly defeat this guy in front of him. At this moment, a few stone pillars suddenly protruded from the sand dune. The forelimbs and the torso of the demon god were fixed on these stone pillars. Seeing this, Lin Yuan immediately laughed softly. The man in black was shocked. He didn't expect the torso and limbs of the demon god to appear so openly at this moment. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. Look, this demon god also hopes that he can reappear in this world. Seeing this, the man in black's face suddenly turned cold. Without hesitation, he pulled out his knife and rushed towards Lin Yuan. If you want to reawaken this demon god, you'll have to step over my dead body. After saying this, his knife turned into a black light and directly slashed towards Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan immediately took a step forward and rushed towards the knife light. Lin Yuan's actions seemed to be deliberately provoking him. At this moment, when the guy saw this scene, his face suddenly changed. He felt that after his knife slashed out, it seemed to be stuck in the void. Chapter 1266. He couldn't make any other movements. At this moment, he felt as if everything had turned cold. Lin Yuan's actions made him unable to imagine what was going on. However, at this moment, Lin Yuan's figure suddenly split into 5. The 5 Lin Yuans rushed to the side and ran to the bottom of each stone pillar. At this moment, several Lin Yuans began to charge. The stone pillar suddenly burst open, and at this moment, it began to burn with raging flames. Then, the black-clothed man threw his sabers into the air. Looks like you're determined to get the demon god's body. Then don't blame me for going all out against you. When he finished speaking, he had already leaped high into the air. The 5 blades that were hovering in the air were like meteors as they ruthlessly smashed towards the stone pillar. Lin Yuan's 5 figures roared directly toward the sky, and then a scorching flame sprayed from their mouths. There was no other movement. It was just a pure head-on collision. Seeing this change, the black-clothed man didn't retreat at all. He waved his hand and his strength became more and more violent. It was a pure collision of strength. At this moment, he finally woke up. The black-clothed man said loudly, "No matter what your purpose is, we have to fight to the death. Don't think that you'll be safe just because you have this special 3 true fire." His 5 sabers turned into 5 streaks of black light and drilled into the stone pillar. Then, a monstrous power erupted from the stone pillar and rose into the sky. At this moment, almost everything had exploded. The black light that blotted out the sky began to spread throughout the space. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes. At this moment, he reappeared in the center of the battlefield. There was only one. Little Iron Egg still wanted to rush forward, but Lin Yuan had already seen that he was not Little Iron Egg's opponent at all. So he pulled out his hand and accepted the battle immediately. However, he didn't expect that this guy would still protect the 5 demon gods' bodies at the last moment. Everything about him seemed to have been verified at this moment. Lin Yuan raised his head slightly and said to the man in black, "Using your own body as the price and your life as the sacrifice, you still want to protect the bodies of the 5 demonic gods. Who on earth is threatening you?" After he finished speaking, there was almost no trace of hesitation. Murderous intent rose. Lin Yuan's expression suddenly turned cold. He originally wanted to give the young man with the black saber a chance. As long as the other party was willing to admit defeat at this critical moment, as long as he had the slightest intention of admitting defeat, he would spare the other party's life. However, not only did this fellow refuse to give in, he even wanted to fight to the death with him. The rainbow-colored light in Lin Yuan's hand began to slowly gather with the black smoke in the sky. Or rather, it was the entanglement of 2 forces. At this moment, Lin Yuan didn't seem to have any hesitation in his actions. He flicked his finger lightly toward the sky, and then the countless 7-colored lights began to transform into several 7-colored divine dragons. They began to devour the black light unknowingly. It was also at this moment that countless chains began to grow from the ground and directly entwined in the air. The man in black shouted, "Good, good, good. I want to see what kind of power you have to resurrect this demon god." After he finished speaking, he soared into the sky almost without any hesitation. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan said directly, "Since you must make sure that this demon god never appears, I can only kill you." After he finished speaking, the sky, which was originally gloomy, instantly became clear. He didn't need to look at anything else. He knew that the guy in front of him had no chance. Those 7-colored divine dragons had already devoured the dark clouds. At this moment, the countless chains had already wrapped around the rainbow divine dragon's body. This was the means of this demon god, and also the stubbornness of this demon god. Lin Yuan's expression began to change. He naturally knew that all this was done to get the demon god. However, he was looking forward to seeing how strong this guy was. Demon god. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly, and he directly took a step forward. Then, all the chains were gently touched by his fingers at this moment, and they all shattered. At this moment, Lin Yuan directly took out the demon god's head and heart in his hand. He knew that as long as he gathered these things, the legendary demon god would be resurrected. However, he didn't expect that at this moment, when he took action, not only had the demon god recovered all its power, but it had even absorbed the rainbow divine dragon that it had released in the sky. Devour? Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He already had some other thoughts in his mind. At this moment, he didn't want any more accidents to happen. He also knew that at this moment, no matter what he wanted to do, he had to endure it because he still didn't know what kind of strength this demon god had. The old turtle stood aside and began to tremble. This guy was trembling all over. He was simply afraid of this demon god in front of him. Although he didn't know which side was more powerful, he knew that no matter which side appeared in front of him, they would definitely have some hidden means. And at this moment, the guy's body began to slowly gather. The sky began to clear, and all the special scenes disappeared. All the desert turned into dust after the power on his body dissipated. Now, the demon god's body was condensing again. This meant that this guy's strength had begun to increase. This was the first time Lin Yuan felt such a majestic power, but it was interesting to think that there was such an existence in the vast ancient path. At this moment, all his attention was on the body of the demon god that had begun to slowly gather together in front of him. He wanted to see what kind of person was so powerful. Lin Yuan slowly watched the sand condense on this guy's body, and his skin and flesh appeared bit by bit. At this moment, the sand seemed to be endowed with some special energy and a special mission. Finally, when all the power in this world was gathered, this guy's true appearance was slowly revealed. I, King Chenkong, am finally alive again. Chapter 1267. Lin Yuan frowned. That was because he heard the other party mention the king of Chenkong. He must have been a king in the past. He watched as the king of Chenkong's body slowly grew taller, and his breathing was like thunder. He knew that the king of Chenkong was definitely a top existence in the world of the Black Pagoda. Human, you are the one who let me out. Chenkong's large eyes suddenly glanced at Lin Yuan. After he finished speaking, his eyes suddenly burst with a burst of vigor. In that case, this king can make you my follower. What? Lin Yuan suddenly laughed. He hadn't expected the king of Chenkong to be so arrogant. Becoming his follower? What kind of joke was that? Before he could say anything, little Iron Egg couldn't hold back anymore. The long spear in his hand shook violently. His power erupted instantly, an endless killing intent swept towards the king of Chenkong. At this moment, the so-called Chenkong king furrowed his brows and said, "There's actually a natural Azura." He laughed loudly. He reached out and grabbed little Iron Egg's long spear. Then he exerted a little force, and the blood-red long spear in his hand instantly turned into powder. However, as an Azura, you are still too weak. My old subordinates are all in your body. Come out. After he finished speaking, he slapped little Iron Egg's body again. Then, the Tianwu Azuras who had already submitted to him appeared. These fellows weren't controlled by the killing intent like before. They all directly submitted to the demon god. Welcome, my king. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan smiled gently. Little Iron Egg dodged to the side. He knew that he wasn't strong enough to deal with the king of Chenkong in front of him. Therefore, he very consciously ran to the side. He knew very well that under such circumstances, only his master would be able to restrain this fellow before him. But before he could make a move, the guy who called himself the king of Chenkong pointed at Lin Yuan fiercely. Submit or die. As soon as he finished speaking, he stretched out his hand to grab Lin Yuan. However, Lin Yuan just waved his hand gently, and then grabbed the guy's huge arm with his hand. A seven-colored light flashed. He cut off the arm of the fiend celestial. The fiend celestial clearly did not expect such a scene to happen. He did not even have time to react. It seems like the rainbow divine dragons that entered my body were all you're doing. He looked at Lin Yuan curiously. Immediately, the rainbow-colored divine dragons surged out from his wrist and turned into his flesh and blood. However, this power is real. It seems you do not intend to become this king's servant. Lin Yuan chuckled. I awakened you in order to make you my servant. Now, I'm giving you a chance. Submit or die. The god fiend seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world. I, the king of Chungkong, am a king. How can I submit to a mortal like you? You can die now. As soon as he finished speaking, he roared. Then, a huge axe appeared in his hand and he slashed at Lin Yuan. Seeing such a scene, Lin Yuan's expression was slightly smiling. He naturally knew that at this moment, this guy would not rest until he was dead. However, this was not his goal. He wanted this guy to become a necessary condition for everyone here to believe in Little Iron Egg. When he thought of this, he took a step forward without any hesitation. Since you're not willing to submit, I'll beat you until you do. Suddenly, a golden bell fell down from the sky. This was another method of Lin Yuan's. A golden bell was directly attached to the god fiend's body. The so-called king of Chungkong could not escape at all. He could feel that this guy had actually started to gnaw on his golden bell. This guy's big mouth seemed to be able to swallow everything. Seeing such a change, Lin Yuan directly snorted coldly, and he fiercely slammed his palm toward the golden bell. With a loud bang, the so-called king of Chungkong covered his ears at this moment. Even his 7 orifices were bleeding. Ah! He screamed and the huge axe appeared in his hand again. However, no matter how hard he tried, he could not break the golden bell. Lin Yuan punched again. Although there was no pleasure in punching flesh, the god fiend was trapped in the golden bell like a trapped beast. Seeing that he could not deal with the guy in front of him, the god fiend opened his bloody mouth and spat out all the azuras that he had swallowed. He wanted to use these azuras as a sacrifice to break the golden bell. Lin Yuan naturally saw through this guy's method. However, he just smiled faintly. Finally, he slapped the golden bell. All the azuras had been scattered. Little Iron Egg, who was at the side, felt endless heartache. He knew that if these azuras were used on him, there would be countless benefits. However, seeing that they had been smashed into pieces, he felt a little heartache. Because his master's decision would not be wrong. Little Iron Egg, there is no need to feel heartache. Since these guys can't submit to you, they will be awakened by the king of Chungkong at any time. Then one day they will become your disaster. What you need to do is to cultivate azuras that are absolutely loyal to you. However, just as he was speaking, the king of Chungkong had already played with the axe in his golden bell. At this moment, cracks appeared on the golden bell. Although the azuras were scattered, their power was still added to the king of Chungkong. There were sounds of collision, followed by a clear cracking sound. Little human, how dare you try to shake the position of a god? After finishing this sentence, this guy directly chopped at Lin Yuan with his axe with monstrous killing intent. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan did not dodge. Instead, he directly faced the axe head-on, and directly punched the blade of the axe head with a fierce punch. Lin Yuan's heart suddenly skipped a beat. This was because he realized that the power used by this guy who was rushing towards him felt very familiar. It was as if it was a power that came from the origin. His expression changed slightly. At this time, although he had already touched the opponent's attack, it did not mean that the opponent would give up. At this moment, the god fiend roared wildly, and the power on his body increased exponentially. This god fiend was like an endless fighting machine. Chapter 1268. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan snorted coldly. Of course, he could see that no matter what trick this guy was playing at this moment, it was actually a silent struggle. At this moment, when Little Iron Egg saw this scene, he was slightly shocked. Because he could feel that at this moment, there seemed to be no power in his master's body. It was as if he was completely isolated from the world at this moment. Moreover, this was a method of isolation that cut off power, which was something that no one had expected. At this moment, the old turtle had already begun to think about his escape route. In his opinion, the demon god in front of him was too terrifying, and he had already heard of the legend of the demon god. Therefore, he only wanted to escape. Only in this way could he save his life. But at this moment, Lin Yuan's mouth suddenly emitted a sound that sounded like a large bell. The unintelligible syllables came out of his mouth, as if they were chimes. Shock. The demon god stood there for a long time without coming back to his senses. He seemed to have lost his mind at this moment, and it seemed that he had no way to resist this power at all. Little Iron Egg's eyes became fervent again. He naturally knew that his master's strength was tyrannical, and it was not something that he could speculate about at all. But seeing the change in the scene, he was also a little curious. He did not know what kind of method this sound used to subdue the demon god so easily. Or rather, it was not accurate to say that the demon god's strength had been reduced, because now the demon god seemed to have been assimilated by this power. He stood there and stared blankly at Lin Yuan in front of him. He did not dare to move at all. The old turtle also seemed to have not reacted at all. He could not even believe what was happening in front of him. What's going on? What kind of power is this? How can it make the demon god submit? Lin Yuan naturally heard the old turtle's words, but he did not care. Instead, he gently waved his hand. It doesn't matter what kind of power this is. You have to see that the demon god is just a defeated opponent in front of me. After saying this, he walked towards the demon god in front of him. The demon god's body began to shrink until it was about the same size as Little Iron Egg. Lin Yuan said faintly, "Is this guy considered to be at the pinnacle of the vast ancient path?" Lin Yuan looked directly at the old turtle next to him. The old turtle clearly didn't react. At this moment, this guy actually questioned him like this. He nodded gently, then shook his head. "Although I don't know who you are, based on the means you have displayed, you should be able to crush the mini-monster kings in the vast ancient road. But you mustn't underestimate the enemy, because the power of the Church of God here is beyond your imagination. So no matter what kind of thoughts you have, it's best not to put them into action. Because you have to think of this. The only one who can control this demon god is the Church of Gods." Lin Yuan frowned. Of course, he knew that this was the territory of the Church of Gods, but he didn't care. For him, the so-called Church of Gods was just a stone in front of him. As long as he wanted to, he could move this stone away anytime and anywhere. He gently reached out and pointed at the demon god in front of him. "Transform into your figure for me. We'll go straight to where we should go." After saying this, he turned around and left without any hesitation. Since there was no one on the vast ancient road who could compete with this demon god, there was no need to hesitate anymore. Now he would let this demon god return to that small barren city with endless horror. Starting from this small barren city, step by step, he would build this place into his own path of retreat, a city that belonged to him. The old turtle, however, turned pale with fright. This was tantamount to a face-to-face confrontation with the god-worship sect. If it really came to this point, the Church of Gods would definitely not let them go so willingly. Instead, they would send their most tyrannical guys to fight against them. Lin Yuan certainly felt the worry of these old turtles at this moment, but he didn't care. Instead of saying that these guys were going to deal with him, it was better to say that he was going to deal with these guys from the Church of Gods. No matter what happened in the end, Lin Yuan could completely decide these things by himself. Although Little Iron Egg didn't know what kind of strength his master had, he could see that the power his master brought at this moment, and the boldness he showed, was not something ordinary people could have. "Master, are we going back now?" Little Iron Egg didn't know what Lin Yuan's next step was, so he was going to ask directly. Lin Yuan nodded. "Of course. If we don't go back now, when will we go back?" Now it could be said that everything was ready. He only knew that with the power of this demon god, he could make the people in this city believe in him again and absorb their incense with such power. He could enjoy their worship. Moreover, he could clearly feel that no matter what he did, these guys would not raise any objections. Lin Yuan's expression was a little subtle, but the old turtle next to him had a strange look on his face. He now had no choice but to follow this crazy guy in front of him. He knew that he couldn't deal with this guy at all with his strength, but what was he going to do now? However, when they returned, they didn't expect that the so-called heroes were still waiting for them at the entrance. Seeing their shadows, the heroes all rushed up. You actually came out alive. I didn't expect you to have such strength. But why are there such changes in your bodies? Changes? Lin Yuan frowned slightly. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He found that the demon god behind him seemed to be emitting a special kind of energy fluctuation, and it spread to the three of them. Lin Yuan was a little surprised. He didn't expect such a thing to happen in front of him. He didn't even know what was going on in front of him. Looking at the changes in front of him, he looked to the side in confusion. Chapter 1269. Little Iron Egg naturally knew nothing about this matter, but the old turtle beside him definitely knew something about it. In fact, although this demon god is terrifying, as long as he sincerely submits and is imprisoned, he will emit a special kind of energy fluctuation. This kind of energy fluctuation is supplied to the vast ancient road. Lin Yuan nodded. He already understood what was going on. It turned out that this demon god's physical strength had always been the fundamental reason why the demon kings in the vast ancient road could improve their realms. As for the desert wolf demon king from before, it was simply unable to withstand the pressure inside, which was why it was pushed out. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and smiled slightly. He looked at the brave warriors in front of him and said, "Are you talking about the power given by these demon gods?" Lin Yuan naturally disdained this kind of power, because for him, this kind of thing was simply a hair on Junyo's body, and it had no effect at all. But for others and even ordinary people, it meant something different. This was because the benefits they could obtain were self-evident. This was especially true for the brave ones. They had been stuck at a bottleneck for many years. But at this moment, when they showed it, when they wanted to have some interaction with Lin Yuan and the others, everyone's expression suddenly froze. This was because they felt that the benefits were real and could not be faked. At this moment, their expressions were all filled with joy because they could see that they had gained benefits at this moment. Who the hell are you? You can actually make this demon god work for you. But after he said this, all the brave warriors understood that this matter was unusual. The fact that the other party could make the demon god submit to him was already a problem. Little Iron Egg took a step forward and said, "As long as you are willing to submit to my master, you can also get this special power. But don't blame me for not reminding you that this power can't be given to you casually. You have to exchange it with absolute loyalty." Lin Yuan didn't say anything. The old turtle beside him directly said, "That's right. Only those who follow Mr. can attain the Tao. He's a rare almighty in this world." At this point, he could already be considered to have a clear view of the situation. He could see what was going on with these people in front of him. He also knew that he had obtained tangible benefits, which was why he said those words at this moment. In his opinion, since things had already come to this point, he had no choice but to do so. Lin Yuan didn't say anything, but the brave warriors looked at him completely differently. The expressions of these fellows changed more or less, but they immediately knelt down and kowtowed. "We're willing to submit." In this borderland, in this chaotic world, having more power meant more ability to protect oneself. Lin Yuan, of course, understood their intentions. These guys weren't loyal yet, so at this moment, he had made a decision in his heart. How to deal with these so-called brave warriors in front of him. In that case, from today on you will become a god, a god. Are you willing? As soon as he finished speaking, these people didn't hesitate at all and directly knelt down. Lin Yuan nodded with satisfaction. He knew that since this matter was considered a success, there was nothing else that could stop this group of people. Sooner or later, this city would be under his control. However, he wanted to change his name to Bruiser. No matter what, Bruiser's name was a little vague, and he couldn't say it out loud. He couldn't let everyone else kneel down and shout, "Welcome the great god Bruiser," right? That was 2F** King Lo. When he thought of this, he pointed at Bruiser and said, "From today on, you're the first god of this city, the Azura god." After he finished speaking, The group of people walked towards the barren city. The people of the God Worship Society had already sent people to this city. They might not know about what had happened on the vast ancient road, but they had already been informed about what had happened here. Therefore, at this moment, the God Worship religion's minions had already been in this frozen city. When Lin Yuan and his group of people arrived outside the city, they heard the ignorant people inside the city, who were still worshipping the God Worship religion, shouting constantly on the city wall. How dare you rebel against the will of God? You're courting death. Now that the God Worship religion has sent people over, don't think that you have any chance at this moment. These people were not polite when they spoke. Obviously, they had been successfully brainwashed by the people of the God Worship religion. Lin Yuan didn't say anything. Instead, he let the demon god who had appeared before stand in front of him. At this moment, the demon god's system was revealed. At this moment, all the people were shocked. They had never seen such a powerful demon god. In their eyes, this was a real god, who was many times more powerful than the monster kings sent by the God Worship religion. Lin Yuan squinted his eyes and smiled lightly. At this time, Tai Danner also took a step forward. I am Azura, the new god. Quickly open the city gate and welcome us into the city. Otherwise, when he said this, his body was full of murderous intent. At this moment, the murderous intent was like a substance, completely surrounding him. Seeing this scene, the people in the city no longer dared to say a word. At this time, a group of armored soldiers stood on the city wall. These guys were all from the God Worship Society. At this time, he stood directly on the city wall and said indifferently, "Are you those rebels? It seems that you won't shed tears until you see the coffin." Although you found a halfway through his words, this guy didn't dare to continue. This was because he had recognized what was standing behind Lin Yuan and the others. It was a demon god. These guys were all stunned because they didn't expect that a demon god would reveal the truth at this moment. Isn't this the demon god in the vast ancient road? Why is he here? The people of the God Worship religion naturally recognized that this was the guy they had trapped in the vast ancient road. Lin Yuan smiled faintly and said, "Since you have recognized me, there's no need to talk nonsense. Open the city gate and surrender. Otherwise, I won't show any mercy." You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.